Oh, I hear the door. Maybe that's Joe.
No,
I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, October 15th, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Item 1 on the agenda is listed as an executive session. And upon discussion with Attorney Dugas, this will no longer be an executive session. And it's to discuss the award between the Board of Education contract with the union. And that's it. Okay, so I'll invite Attorney Dugas up. Thank you. I won't have to invite anybody to executive session or clear the room because we're in open session. So thank you.
This is obviously the culmination of a process that is guided by the Teacher Negotiation Act, very similar to the Municipal Employee Relation Act that governs your public works and town employees. The only difference is we negotiate teacher and administrator contracts a full year ahead of time by statute. So we began negotiations. I've done the negotiations here probably since at least since 2000, maybe before. And this is the first time in anyone's memory we've gone to arbitration. We started the process in May. We had about 7 negotiation sessions during the summer. We have been using a process known as interest-based bargaining. It's supposed to be a kinder, gentler way to settle contracts. When we began the bargaining process, we had, of course, Tom Handler was sitting in with us and providing us input. Tom explained to us very early on some of the fiscal concerns that the town had and impressed upon us that it needed to be a fairly austere year, that there were some communications from the town about the expectation of zero or close to zero budgets, and that really informed, I should say, our negotiations throughout this process. I think we took a very hard line with the teachers. They too took a hard line. Their expectations were high. And as a result, we didn't settle. So we went to mandatory mediation. We were unable to settle. And then ultimately, we were required to go to binding arbitration. And you have the results. And I can summarize that briefly. But I thought more importantly to just tell you about the process under the law and where we are right now. So under the Teacher Negotiation Act, the legislative body of the town, which I understand for these purposes, Jerry, is the Board of Selectmen, has the right to reject this award, okay? To do it, 2/3 of your members must vote to reject. And although it's a little awkward, typically we would phrase that as a motion to reject the award. If you were in favor of that, you'd vote yay. If you were against it, you'd vote no if you wanted to let the award sit. And then it goes to a second panel of arbitrators. And those arbitrators do not take any additional evidence. They rely on the evidence that was presented in the hearings before the first panel, and then they make a decision. In my experience, that is not an inexpensive process. I have been involved in that a couple of times. Ironically, in one of the cases, Mr. Weiner was on the panel. And I've also been involved in it when a police contract was rejected in Trumbull by the council. And that case, as I recall, cost upwards of $80,000. It's not an inexpensive proposition. I couldn't tell you what it would cost, but I can almost guarantee you it would be north of $25,000. The way the statute is written, you shoulder that, not the Board of Education. Just a little bit of background. The other background that I would give you is that the teacher salary account is such that 1% equals $66,000. So in other words, we would have to save over 0.5% off of the award to even begin to look at breaking even on doing that. So that's pretty much the process. It has to be a 2/3 vote of the selectmen. It has to be done within 25 days of the award. I forget I'm not sure exactly what that day is, but we're within that period of time, and if so, it goes to a second panel. Yes, sir.
Attorney Newton, just a quick question. In terms of your experience, what have you found going to the Secretary of Arbitration from a results standpoint in terms of outcome?
We refer to it as a rubber stamp. It's very unusual for the second panel to overturn it. There'd have to be some very strong and compelling evidence. Again, the only time that I've had it, I've had it happen 3 or 4 times, and only one time, teacher contract in Cheshire, Mr. Weiner was the chair, and that actually did reverse it, because what had happened is between the time, there was a settlement agreement that was reached, and it was rejected by the council, and then went to arbitration, and that was the year where the budget wasn't set by the state, and between the rejection by the council and the panel hearing the case, there were some fairly significant changes in the fiscal climate, and that factored into a slightly lower award. The cost were a little bit less than the savings, the additional savings, but it did. So it's pretty rare. One time the rule of thumb was like 80–85%. You'll see the same decision you saw the first time.
Can you explain to us how the mediation process works? Who selects the mediator?
Well, the parties select the mediator. Normally, there are a handful of state mediators that we choose from. In this case, because we were using somebody from the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service in the negotiations themselves, we agreed, as we have in the past, just to use that mediator. It was a different mediator this time, but that agency's appointee as the mediator. So that's how it works. Mediation is not binding.
No, I understand that, but in discussions that I've had with people who were involved, one of the issues raised was the qualifications, really, and effectiveness of the mediator. So I wondered if there was any role that either the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Education has in terms of selecting the person who's going to try to mediate this agreement.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen, no. The Board of Education, yes, it's by agreement. And again, because we had used the Federal Mediation Service in the past, and we just, to work with us throughout the negotiations, we just agreed to use that, person. Again, this time the individual changed, but
Right.
that's how we agreed to it. And since we're in public, I won't comment on the effectiveness. It just,
But I think
I'm not sure, if we had an extremely experienced mediator, if the outcome would have been the same when our, I don't want to say marching orders, but direction was, it's got to be, bare bones, and the teachers' union's expectation was significantly higher. So I'm not sure it would have mattered. So the one thing that I can tell you is that if you look at the award, I'm just going to talk about the wage piece. First of all, on the health insurance side, I think we pretty much ran the table. We were getting a 4.5% increase in cost share over a 3-year period, which is pretty unusual. We also, I don't want to get too technical here, but we got a change to the plan design that's going to generate about 3.5% in savings. It has to do with whether the deductibles in and out of network work together or not. And of course, eliminating, as you have in your contracts, retiree medical for new hire teachers, that should have a significant impact on your ARC in terms of your OPEB obligation. On the money side, last year the settlements for 3 years for a teacher with the cost of step movement, which is always the biggest cost of a teacher contract, was 8.5% over 3 years. This award ended up being about 9% over 3 years, and we keep track of the settlements, and they're actually coming in right at about 9% this year, which says to me, it's not likely. The arbitrators are going to know that. and that's not gonna make a difference. The only thing I will say about the money is the way that the arbitrator decided the years, I think, I really question that. I think if they had awarded what the board wanted the first year, it would have lowered the costs for 2020-21, and it would have lowered the cost overall. It would have been more in around the 8.6% range, but again, it would have been lower in the first year and more in the second and third, and I would have, that's the one area where I have some criticism of the award, as did one of the panel members, Mr. Romanow, the management panel member. But otherwise, given where teacher settlements have been, given where they are this year so far, I wouldn't be optimistic that we'd have a much different result with the second panel. It's feasible, but not optimistic.
Anybody have any other questions? Okay.
So in your experience, has the board, and I haven't been on this side, has the Board of Selectmen voted to not move to reject the award, or do they vote just to go ahead and with
Yeah.
the proceeding?
With the way most-
What kind of vote
The
should
way
we
most
take?
towns and cities do it is it's a vote to reject, and that way there's no ambiguity. Sometimes you get a 3-3 split, and what does that leave you? But, it's typically a vote to reject, and again, if you are in favor of that, you would vote yay. If you were against it, didn't think it was worthwhile and didn't want to spend the money, you'd vote no, in which case it wouldn't be rejected and the award would stand, and then the board's got to figure out how to make it work.
So if the board doesn't want to go and move to reject, no action is required, is that what
Oh,
you're saying?
absolutely, you can take no action too.
Right, okay.
Can you tell us approximately, what is the cost of the arbitration, and is that something that the town bears?
Are you talking about the one up to this point, or
Yes,
or if
the
it's
one up-
rejected?
The one up to this point.
I don't have the number, but I'm gonna estimate it was in the $15,000 to $20,000 range.
And is that the liability to the town, and does the union also have a liability for arbitration?
The Board of Education is responsible for that, and the union has its own costs. Their costs are a little lower because they tend to appoint one of their attorneys or staff reps to sit on the panel, but they still have to pay half the cost of the neutral arbitrator, and some of the costs for the court reporter and so forth. And they have preparation costs just as we do.
So that 15 to 20 includes counsel fees, arbitration fees, and everything?
Transcript, yeah, I'm probably on the
Okay.
low side. It's
Right.
probably all of 20,000, maybe a little bit more, 20 to 25,000. And by the way, I want to thank Mr. Genovese, who was very helpful on the insurance stuff and the ability to pay. Appreciate it.
Okay, so, I guess that we have to have a discussion about what we're gonna do about this.
You would want to see if anybody wants to make a motion
Would
to
anyone-
reject.
Would anyone like to make a motion to reject the settlement?
No.
Okay. Mika, Joe?
No.
Okay, I
We're
either.
done.
Okay, so we're done.
No action.
It stands, okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much.
Item 2 on the agenda is the Amity Regional District Number 5 presentation regarding the upcoming referendum. And Terry Loomis is here. And anyone else that's with you, if you could just introduce yourselves. Thank you.
While Terry gets that ready, I'm Ernie Goodwin, the Director of Athletics for the Amity Regional School District.
Hi, I'm Terry Loomis. Ernie and I and Dr. Byers have been going to the different towns and meeting with parent groups and selectmen groups to make sure everyone is aware of, Amity's plan to go out for a referendum in December, and what items exactly that we do plan to bond for and upgrade our facilities. So as you know, this is part of our mission statement, our motto, that we pride ourselves on the 3 A's of Amity: academics, arts, and athletics, and to provide a highly comprehensive and competitive atmosphere. In order to do that, we need to have the facilities and opportunities to allow our students to succeed. So we plan on December 4th, 2019 to have a bond referendum with 2 questions. And the outcomes will have lasting impact for decades. As you will see as we go through this, the things we are looking to replace have been part of our facilities for 20, sometimes 30, almost 40 years. So the things we're looking to replace, we plan to have on our campus and in use for many decades. So question 1 will be dealing with building facilities. The air handlers and air conditioning at Amity High School. We had a study done in 2016, an engineering study, analyzing the age of our air handlers and the time that they should be replaced. So they have a 20-year estimated lifespan. They're about at 27 years right now. We've been replacing one here and there. We've had a couple of unexpected failures that we've had to address. But with good maintenance, we have really extended their useful life and plan to replace them and do the same. With good maintenance, get a long life out of them. That goes hand in hand with refurbishing the chillers at Amity High School. They were done in the 90s reconstruction project. We've done 2 phases of parking lot replacement at Amity High School, and this would be the final phase. The acoustic improvements for sound and safety are at each of the middle schools, and those are the large gathering spaces where it's difficult to hear announcements. It's difficult to hear performance as well. So the gym, the cafeteria, and the music rooms, really to improve the sound and also to make sure announcements come through, especially for safety reasons. The second question deals with the athletic facilities at Amity High School. So first, the stadium section, we are proposing a new post-tension concrete track. Our current track is in need of replacement. This is a new design. It's the same design we used on our tennis courts a couple of years ago. It has a very long lifespan. The concrete part, I believe, is 50 years expected. LED lights and poles, our current lights, you'll see some pictures come up, are old halide lights, and the poles are old telephone poles that, again, are beyond their useful life and need to be addressed. The scoreboards at 2 different fields, the stadium field and field 3. Field 3 is behind the tennis courts where, I don't know if you know, soccer is played.
Yep, soccer lacrosse right now.
That field currently doesn't have any scoreboard, but we do use it for varsity events, so it would really behoove us to have a scoreboard there, and the stadium scoreboard, you'll see, is quite dated. Also an all-weather field at the stadium. The field that we have there is sod. It limits the amount we can use it because it's sod. The football team gets to use it. There's one sport, about 15 or 20 events a year. You'll see the statistics as we go through. So an all-weather field really increases the amount of use we can get out of that stadium field. Bleachers on field 3 with an ADA compliant walkway. Right now we kind of have temporary bleachers. We're looking for more permanent bleachers and a safe way to get there because there is no access for anyone with a disability at this point. So again, we talk about 30-year-old facilities. It's a need, not a want. We are looking to update the athletic facilities to 2020 standards. You could see the dates that things were input, back to 88 on the light poles, 99, 96. So these are many items that we've gotten a lot out of them, but it is time. So we talk about the track replacement was installed in 99, it was resurfaced in 2010. We've done repairs. We have some great in-house maintainers who do some of our own repairs. They've repaired sinkholes, but you can see the worn surface. We repaint the lines every year, but the surface itself is very worn. So with the post-tension concrete track, we would get, expected about 50 years on the under, the base of it. The top layer, is what material?
This is the rubber material.
Yeah.
It can be
So-
scraped off and replaced.
So that would periodically be replaced, but the under part of it would have the 50-year expectation. But because it's concrete and we're in, an area where there is a lot of frost and heaving and settling, the concrete will do better than the asphalt that is currently under there. So this different style track is why we're gonna get the longer life expectancy out of it. So the pictures here you see is on the left is the current lighting at the stadium. You can see the halide lights more or less shine out, and there's a lot of light pollution. They're not very efficient lights. They're on old wood poles. When you look to the right, you see LED lighting. You can see that there's a lot less spillage. The cost to run LED lights is much less, and they would be on new metal poles. So we feel that the neighbors would probably appreciate the light shining more down on the field and not directly towards their homes. And again, our scoreboard, you can see on the left, the current scoreboard, it is designed only for football. Scoreboard on the right is something similar to what we would get. It could be used for multiple sports. It would be a virtual scoreboard, which you could switch between sports. We might be able to do some video streaming during graduation and such. Again, lower energy consumption because it's LED technology. So increased efficiency and connectivity to the press box. So a real upgrade into the modern century. So the stadium field, the all-weather field, here's where we talk about the actual use of it. Currently right now, 75 athletes use that field, and we're looking at potentially 400 athletes, 0 games, 90 practices, 16 games to 60 games. So usually it's the football games, and I think each couple of sports have a senior night on that field.
Not even right now, not even right now, but they would.
If we were, we don't get to host SEC conferences and state tournaments on our field. One, our field couldn't handle that kind of tournament play with repetitive use, the grass turf. It would be eaten up. So this is a drawback. We're the only DIRG A and B school, and DIRGs are demographic reference groups, so it's groups who, school districts who are like us. We're the only one in the state that doesn't have an all-weather field. So it also opens up the stadium field to use by PE classes during the day. Sometimes now the field's too wet, they can't go up there, and they also have to limit the use so that it doesn't damage it for the sports play. And we actually go out and we rent some all-weather fields because many of our athletes are going to play on an all-weather field. Some sports are very different on an all-weather field as they are on a grass field. So they'd be at quite a disadvantage if they had never experienced playing on an all-weather field. So we do rent some all-weather fields in the area to give some exposure to that. And then we list some other sports that would benefit: baseball, softball, dance, cheer. This is the design of the field. You can see there's many markings on it for all the different sports that could use the field. So field 3, varsity JV, freshman boys and girls soccer, lacrosse would still have games there. There's no access, I mentioned before. We have a small set of portable fields, and we'd have an LED scoreboard there. So again, question 1 is about, our air handlers, air conditioning, refurbishing the parking lot, refurbishing the chillers, parking lot improvements, acoustic. That's about a almost $3.2 million bond. And question 2 is for the athletic facilities with all those items I just discussed, about $3.6 million together, $6.7 million in a bond request. The bond right now is expected to be a 10-year bond. So I kind of ran through that fast, but I know you have a really long agenda, but Ernie and I are here to answer any questions if you have any.
What's the cost savings for the lighting to put LED versus what you have? I know there's a caving, but I'm assuming you've done a study of an approximate. savings per year for electricity that you'll be using, you know?
They will be less, the.
I know it's not, but do you have it, and,
Well, right now, the lights, and they will continue, so we are allowed, I believe by ordinance, to only have the lights on for X
10.
number of games, 10 games a year. So there's not enough generated to do an energy efficiency process,
so
because
you
we don't,
wouldn't use it for lacrosse if they wanted to play a night game, you
we
wouldn't?
wouldn't be allowed.
You
It
wouldn't be
doesn't-
allowed to, it would only
we're
be
not allowed
afternoon
to.
games?
We're gonna stay with the town zoning.
No, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Yep.
okay. And on the track, if you do the new track, you're gonna scrape and replace, what's that maintenance, is it a 5-year, 10, you know, what is the normal wear after you put the new track in?
10
When do
years.
you- It's
Yep.
10 years, so every 10 years you'll be,
Just scraping the surface, putting
and
just
what
the
would the
new top.
cost of that be approximately?
I think the last time we did it, it was about 30,000.
Okay.
So that's something that more we could plan in our 5-year plan and incorporate in a budget cycle as opposed to getting a bond, because we wouldn't be starting from scratch.
And then, you know, when I was at the high school, when you did the initial, the maintenance of the turf field, what would be the normal maintenance? There is some maintenance that is required during the year, but it's nothing like you have now that, you know, because of the grass.
Right, so there's a special piece of equipment that's part of the price that's built in that we would use to regularly groom the field. And then every few years, we would have the company come in and do more of a deep cleaning to the field. So, when we look at the cost between the two, a turf field, the turf field, would cost about twice as much more to maintain if you are putting aside money every year for that 12 to 15-year replacement of the turf part. If you don't, then maintaining the turf field is less. But that's something we would have to budget for.
And what would the approximate cost of that be?
So it's about 15,000 a year to maintain just the turf field.
Just the turf field.
And we estimate just under 30,000 if you put aside, 20,000 a year to, plan for the replacement of the turf. So not just to clean the turf as it exists, but to plan for the replacement.
When you say the turf, is that the football field only, or the football field and the track?
Just the football field.
Football field.
But it would be the all-purpose field at that point, though.
You're right.
That's
We have to
the
stop
whole
saying
point of this is
football field.
it goes from being a football field to a multi-purpose field. Every sport will use it, and that's really where we're limited right now. We have our stadium, and it's not really like our stadium, it's just football. So it would really expand our program tremendously. It's almost adding a brand-new field to our complex, if you will. Practices, everything. So we're talking, even town organizations, I see in the off-season using this field, where right now we just can't, because the field is so muddy and it drains so poorly. From what I understand, there's a layer of clay, and that doesn't drain well.
Then you also mentioned the person who was the vendor also mentioned it could take like up to 90 inches of rain an hour or whatever it is, and it'll
Yeah.
drain within like a half hour for use or
Absolutely.
whatever. That
Yeah,
was-
the drainage is gonna be amazing.
So, you can play in a light rain, you can play immediately when it stops raining, which is not the conditions that we experience currently with the, field we have.
In the spring, no muddy fields can stop us, that kind of stuff.
I noticed you mentioned that they were the only school in DRGA and B. Is that, like, for example, I equate athletics to conferences.
Sure.
Are we the only team in the conference that doesn't have one of these fields, basically?
Pretty much. There are a couple, of the schools, Wilbur-Cross is probably the only,
The only other
area school that does not have one, but they use Bowen Field.
Right.
And I'm surprised that they've talked about replacing that, but other than that, Durgay is kind of like your Gold Coast, your Greenwiches, your Darien, those kind of schools. Durg B, Simsbury, Farmington, Guilford, Madison, those are all our like schools. They all have actually multiple fields,
Yeah.
multiple all-weather fields at this point.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you very
Thank you
much.
much for your time.
If you're looking for more information on our athletics website, we have a lot of links and that kind of stuff, facts, and so you can always get more information.
There's always a concern of carcinogens and things of that nature that
Sure.
always comes up. I'm sure you've looked at that, and could you just comment on
Absolutely.
it?
We took really close look at that because we know that it was an issue in the past. And two things that we're doing. There is some rubber in the field. It's cryogenic rubber, which is virgin rubber, never been used in a tire or anything. It's also, they do a cryogenic system so that it passes the European standard for toys. So the same as like a Binky has rubber, is the same as this rubber. And also, the top dressing on our field is called Cool Play. It's actually more of a plastic, and it also is green, which makes it 40 degrees cooler than the average field as well. So basically, we've taken out all the issues that could be held up. There's also a Department of Health study that we use, which is a neutral party, obviously. The Connecticut Department of Health that we have up there as well, who said that the risk is non-significant as well.
And obviously, there's been enough other fields at this point in time to have some sort of statistical analysis on injuries and/or performance.
Yep, great question. There absolutely has been. The field that we selected it's all based by the amount of infill. And we've selected the safest field that we could get, which is 9.2 pounds of infill per square inch or foot, and that is statistically decreases the amount of injuries compared to any other field that we have. The only field that's safer than that is a Premier League soccer field over in Europe. They manicure those fields better than anything, so we can't lay claim that they were better than that. But any other field around, it'll be a safer statistically field, which is what we want. We care greatly about the safety of our kids.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Item 3 on the agenda is the first selectmen's report, but I just noticed that Senator Logan has joined us. So hello from the audience. Without objection, I request that we move him up on the agenda to come and speak with us now about, thank you, about the item, let's see, item 5, which is resolution in support of funding for the Valley Fire Chiefs Regional Training School. And you have in your packet a copy of the resolution. Welcome, Senator Logan. Thank you.
Excuse my voice. I'm in the process of getting over a cold there, so I'm a little raspy there. But I thank you for the
Thank
audience
you.
here. So, for a little over a decade or so, actually almost close to 20 years, we've been working on finding a location and building a fire training school for our firefighters, particularly our volunteer firefighters. But this training school would be available for all firefighters in the area for training. Over the years, we've been able to secure a location in Bethany. The state paid around $1 million for the property. We actually had the funds sort of allocated for the training school. We're talking about $14 million or so. And we're waiting for it just to come up on the agenda. So we recognize that with the state in terms of its financial issues, in terms of borrowing and trying to prioritize how we're spending the money, our good Governor Lamont is in a tough position in terms of trying to figure out where to utilize the state's bonding money. So we have been trying throughout the Valley region just to put in resolutions, just showing from our standpoint how important the Valley Training School would be for the community, and to show that there's support in the Valley. So the resolution is really just to show that there's support for our firefighters and for the training school, and to assist the leaders in Hartford in terms of helping to prioritize, and hopefully we can get it pushed up in a priority level so that we can get it approved. So it's a resolution that'd be helpful. Ansonia's passed one. Shelton is looking at it. Beacon Falls has passed a similar resolution as well. Seymour has as well. And it'd be one that would benefit. And it's a matter of the training school is a matter of safety. helping to make sure that our firefighters are trained appropriately and they can do that locally. In addition, it also helps out in terms of the recruitment for volunteer firefighters and for firefighters. Right now, it's very inconvenient to train our firefighters in the valley. They have to go to other areas for training. We kind of have to play second fiddle and wait in line, and we get times that are not helpful for our firefighters, particularly for raising families, because oftentimes they have to be on the weekends when the fire schools are available. And this is something that will live on for generations and provide a legacy for our community. So again, this is just the Valley community just coming together, working with the state in terms of trying to show and justify the importance of the Valley Training School.
You had an event last week, too.
What's that?
There, you had an event at the site
That's correct.
last week. You
That's
had a-
correct.
With, see the fire chiefs that were there.
Yes, we
All
had
the
fire chiefs from
all
the
the
valley and beyond.
And beyond.
All of the most of the valley fire chiefs were there, but we also had Fairfield on board showing support. And again, the reason is that it will benefit certainly the valley and Woodbridge and Hamden, but the general greater valley area as well will benefit. Naugatuck, Waterbury as well. So
I just had a question about where it's located.
yes,
You said it's going to be
in Beacon Falls.
Beacon Falls, okay.
That's
thanks.
correct.
I couldn't hear, I thought.
And the property has
I don't
already.
have a cold, but I can't hear.
Yeah, and the property has already been not only identified but actually purchased. We actually have the land.
Okay.
And you know, and the governor certainly has indicated that this is a priority of his, and it's just a matter of timing amongst everything else, all the other spending that's going on. And so we're just you know trying to be a little squeaky wheel there and just let them know that this is very important to our community.
Okay, thanks.
So the bonding is actually to build a building?
That's correct.
Okay,
Not to renovate a building, to build a new
to
building.
build a new building.
Correct.
Now, who covers the operational costs once the building is built?
Yes, the area towns that are involved with the Valley Fire Department in terms of operations, they all assist. And remember, most of the folks are volunteer, but as far as operating costs, they do have an association that works together, and the region helps in terms of the operating costs
Okay.
for the facility.
So do you anticipate that there will be any appeals back to the various boards of selectmen for additional funds to actually operate the center?
They have that sort of worked out. I mean, Woodbridge, I believe, has is your fire department? Is our fire department?
All
is a volunteer as well?
All volunteer.
Yeah. So if they're right. So if they're planning on utilizing the facility, there would be obviously some implications or expectations if they decide to use it. But that would be up to the community. So, for example, if Woodbridge, I would imagine, would want to use the facility, it would only make sense that they would have some responsibility in terms of helping to keep it going. And the more towns we have involved in utilizing it, the better. And we're talking about well over 14. The Naugatuck Valley COG has also shown support for the Valley firefighter training school as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have to read the resolution? We could skip it, okay? Everyone's read it in the packet, I hope. All right. I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution supporting the Valley Fire Chiefs Regional Training School.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Thank
Thank
you
you
all.
very much
Greatly
for coming.
appreciate it. It's a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the agenda, item 3, for Selectmen's report. Good evening. My first comments will be to update the board on the caretaker-farmer discussions I have had over the past few months between the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society and farmer Ethan Schneider. Jerry Weiner, Tony Genovese, and I have met several times with various members of the society, their lawyer Dwight Merriam, and with Ethan Schneider and Leland Torrance. We've tried to listen and resolve the issues of both sides, that being the society's need for a new caretaker to supervise the Darling House collection and Farmer Schneider's need to continue to farm the land. Leland Torrance, who had originally agreed to volunteer for both the society and the town as the building and ground supervisor, has attended several of these meetings with us as well. The society is adamant that they must have a caretaker on the premises 24/7, 365, to frequently check on the collection, and Ethan is adamant that he must live on the property to continue his farming. With staff help, we researched various historic homes in the area to ascertain if they have a farmer as part of their arrangement and/or if they have a caretaker for their collections living on the property. I put that document at your places right now. That's this large. Tony Belinsky researched and did it all, and it's pretty much complete at this point. It took her a while to finish it. With staff help, we researched various historic homes in the area to ascertain if they have a farmer. I read that already. You have at your places a copy of data gathered regarding these area historic homes. I will note that none of the historic homes have caretakers living in the homes. One home has a farmer who hays the property, which is then used for a corn husk maze at their home. Just a reminder to everyone, the town owns the Darling House and the other structures on the property, and the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society owns the entire Darling collection, which is currently in the Darling House. I've been trying to come up with a compromise. For example, we suggested that the town install a museum-quality security system with temperature, water, and humidity sensors in each room and in the basement, and a state-of-the-art video motion detector alarm and fire suppression system, and also provide a system that members of the society are able to access on a personal phone at any hour, night or day. We also suggested the farmer that we somehow find a way to provide him with a dwelling on the property, such as a FEMA hut, so he might live on the property, but not in the caretaker's apartment. As of this date, nothing has been agreed to. I will keep trying and keep you informed. We will try to meet again over the next month, but I anticipate that we must add this agenda to the November Board of Selectmen agenda, and then I believe we must make a decision on how this will be finalized if we can't come up with a compromise between both sides. We also have on our agenda this evening approval of the Good to Great grant for the Society, which is a positive step for the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society as they continue their most important work. As we discussed at our last board meeting, I have asked Insight Design and their new partner, Warnock Construction, to attend the town's major boards and commissions during October and early November to do a Q&A presentation and give our board and commission members and the public several opportunities to ask their questions. They were at the Board of Police Commissioners and the Economic Development Commission meetings on October 10th. They will attend the Board of Finance and the Conservation Commission on October 17th, the Board of Fire Commissioners and the Commission on the Use of Publicly Owned Properties on October 21st, and the Recreation Commission on October 28th, and the Human Services Commission on November 4th. I strongly encourage residents to attend one or more of these meetings to become better informed about this proposal. Please see the online town calendar or the online agenda center for details and any schedule changes. We will also schedule a special town meeting prior to the referendum for all residents to attend and view the presentation and ask all their questions. There are copies of the opinions of 2 attorneys regarding the zoning issues in your packets, which I know, Dwight, you said you hadn't gotten them, so we sent them out to you and everybody else, and there are additional copies on the table there for the public. Following some discussion from our last meeting, I have decided to retain attorney David Groggins to negotiate the contract with Insight and Werner before the referendum, so that voters will be able to see the terms prior to voting. Attorney Groggins has experience in negotiating contracts related to sale of town-owned property for age-restricted housing. Once the contract is completed, it will be available at Town Hall for public inspection. As I have said many times, I believe strongly this is an important and worthy project for the town. Every year it costs our town almost $500,000 to repay the money we borrowed to buy the former country club property. In these tight financial times, that is money that could be used elsewhere. Our tax collector has informed me that at least 30 Woodbridge residents have moved out of town to over 55 housing in the past few years. Those residents we lost due to the lack of this type of housing. In the past, both the golf course and the swimming pool lost money. It's time to move on. If this project is approved, we will sell approximately 60 acres of the 155 acres for development for over 55 housing for $5.4 million. We can then use that money to pay off the debt, saving $500,000 every year, keeping 90 plus or minus acres as open space for everyone to enjoy. Once the project is completed, it is anticipated that it will generate approximately It will generate approximately $1.5 million in additional property taxes annually. This project will give us real money that could be used to reduce our mill rate and, most importantly, bring relief to taxpayers. Let me also reiterate I have never stated that we should seek a conservation easement on the 90 plus or minus acres that we will retain, as that could restrict that land for any future use, such as solar installation, a dog park, or other such items. I have also stated that it is important for us to retain this acreage for passive town use, much like the Fitzgerald property, which also does not have a conservation easement, and yet is maintained for town recreational use. I would like to address several issues that have come up recently. It has been said that approximately $900,000 left after we pay the debt will be entirely consumed for environmental remediation. The purchaser of the property will assume the cost of all remediation on the property they are buying. The town already remediated one significant environmental hazard near the maintenance facility, and we might choose to remediate other areas depending on decided use. There is no time limit on remediating the portion of the town retains. Deep could require some remediation in the future. It was also stated that there are plans to, quote, bond an additional $6.4 million for the old firehouse and police station renovations. No decision has been made regarding those expenses. That decision will be made by the boards of Selectmen and Finance and will need to be voted on by the taxpayers. I have heard that there is some concern that our town would have to provide more police, more fire personnel and equipment, and more public works maintenance like plowing and paving of adjacent roads. I telephoned Orange First Selectman Jim Zioli, actually this afternoon, and he reported that Orange did not hire additional police or fire personnel. The Homeowners Association fees paid by the owners of the over 55 homes will pay for private plowing and private paving of the roads within the complex. The town of Woodbridge is already responsible for plowing and paving the adjacent roads. As I have stated many times, I believe this important matter should be decided by the townspeople at a referendum, so everyone will have the opportunity to vote. On item 4 on our agenda, we will vote to call for the call of the special town meeting and referendum. Again, let's let the voters decide. I have been in regular contact with the Woodbridge Dog Park as a cooperative, and they will be seeking inland wetlands permission to remove the asphalt at the former ice skating rink at the town-owned Fitzgerald Field. We are hopeful that the dog park may open very soon. They have most of the funding necessary, I believe, for the fencing and other requirements, and are still seeking funding for amenities like benches and landscaping. I also want to remind everyone that this month we are in the middle of Fallapalooza. This coming weekend there will be an arts and music festival at the First Church of Christ from 10 to 1 on Saturday. Everyone is welcome. There will be arts, music, and dance. That same day there will be 2 hikes leaving the town center at 9, an easy family hike and a more challenging 5-mile hike. The family hike will pass through the Fitzgerald Field, where we will do a ceremonial tree planting. Details are on the town website. This month I attended the Freedom of Information Workshop for Board and Commission members. It was very informative, and if you missed it, it is available for viewing on the WOGAT 79 YouTube channel. I attended a meeting about K-12 Amity regionalization, which reviewed briefly the options and procedures should this move forward. On September 25th, I attended the monthly SCROG meeting. On September 27th, I held my monthly meeting with Woodbridge Superintendent Bob Gilbert and Finance Director Tony Genovese. On October 2nd, I had my monthly meeting with Police Chief Capiello and also with Amity Superintendent Jen Byers. That evening, I attended the Human Services second annual Living Treasure Award dinner, where Charlie Whiting, Virginia Clistro, Ellie Sheehy, and Margaret Hamilton were honored. It was a wonderful evening. On October 6th, I presented a citation to Michael Bache at his Eagle Scout Court of Honor at Congregation B'nai Jacob. And on October 7th, I attended the Board of Education's walkthrough of Beecher School for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to demonstrate why the Board of Ed will be making certain budget requests. And with that, we will move on to item 4. Former Country Club of Woodbridge Development discussed the date of special town meeting / referendum and action as appropriate.
These are 2 simple motions for that. I just want.
Can I read that?
Yeah, if you can.
Can I read your writing?
Well, if you can't, I'll tell you.
You should do that.
Okay.
I can't read it.
So Beth, there's 2 motions. She has we have a formal written motion, but there are 2 motions that I'd like to
I should take
read
those
into
right,
the
'cause
record,
we've got to send those out to the rest of us.
just so there's
This is the
no,
proposed motion.
right, just so there's no ambiguity. And the first motion is that the first selectman moves to approve scheduling a special town meeting to consider a resolution to sell approximately 60 plus or minus acres of land within the proposed property known as the Country Club of Woodbridge on 50 Woodfield Road for construction of no more than 120 age-restricted homes on November 12, 2019, which will be the special town meeting. That's the motion that I think that Beth will be making. That's the
Okay.
first motion.
All right.
That motion is just having the board act on whether the board would approve having a special town meeting on November 12th to consider the issue of the sale of the 60 acres.
So my question is, should I make this, is that
No, we'll
what?
do that afterwards.
Okay.
Let's discuss this one first.
Okay, so I would open this up for discussion on this motion, or proposed motion, I should say.
I mean, I personally feel that this project addresses several key needs of the town. The first is to grow our tax revenue and grow our grand list so we can reduce our mill rate. We don't have any other options. There are not that many other properties that can be built in the town. This is an opportunity for us to create additional tax revenue. It also enables us to create a town park that'll provide us with additional recreational facilities. It'll provide housing for seniors in our community and keeps that tax revenue within the town as opposed to people leaving. And I think it's very important at this point to bring this proposal to the town residents to decide whether or not to proceed.
Thank you. Dwight, any comments?
Okay, with going to the special town meeting.
Okay. Mika?
My feeling is that recognizing that most of the financials we talked about are potential. However, when you look at the financials, they are compelling, as Sandy alluded to. And the town being in the position we are, it is, as Sandy said, one of the few properties that the town controls in terms of what can be done with it. So from the perspective of it being as compelling as it is, I feel like, and I also feel like a town meeting would give the opportunity that a lot of folks have been looking for, to have the back and forth communication with regard to questions and with regards to information exchange, in the hopes that we can get out as accurate information as possible to make sure everyone understands facts as opposed to what questions there might be. So I do feel like a town meeting would be appropriate and would be helpful.
Well, I said in my opening, I'm losing my voice, my opening remarks, that I thought it would be important to let the voters decide, and this is the way to let that happen. Either way.
Right, that's correct.
Joe, anything
I agree.
else? No? Dwight, want to add anything? Okay, so, I'm gonna make this.
No, just this one now. All in favor of the motion to hold the special
Okay,
town meeting?
all in
on
favor of,
Can
all
we get
in
a second,
favor?
Jerry? I don't think we got a
Oh,
second.
you need a
I'm gonna
second.
make the motion.
Okay.
I'm gonna make it, okay,
No, you're voting on this, what I just read.
right. Oh, you-
Okay, so
oh,
we already
okay.
made the motion.
This
You're
is-
gonna
Okay.
adopt the motion.
Okay.
This
It's
is,
gonna be Beth's motion that I read.
Okay, I'll
You need a
second the
second.
motion. I'll
Okay,
second the
all
motion.
right. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, guys. Okay, any further discussion on that single motion?
okay, that's to hold a special town meeting.
Correct.
Yes.
On
On
November 12th.
November
November
12th, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
So then the second, just as for explanation, at a special town meeting, usually the townspeople that show up at the special town meeting have the opportunity to vote on whatever issue the meeting is called for. What we have done the last time the country club issue came up, and I think everybody was in favor of this, is not to have a vote on the issue at the special town meeting, but and the state statutes give the Board of Selectmen the opportunity and the right to remove the actual vote from the special town meeting and adjourn the special town meeting to a referendum, so people have the opportunity to vote at the machine. It actually is on a paper ballot, and those paper ballots are counted at the end, and that, at the end of the evening, the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. There are absentee ballots available to people who cannot make it and qualify for an absentee ballot. So the second motion that I will read into the record, just for clarification, is the following. To approve that the vote on the resolution to sell approximately 60 plus or minus acres of land be removed from the special town meeting and adjourned to a referendum vote at an adjourned town meeting to be held on Wednesday, December 11th, 2019, between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m., and no vote will be taken at the special town meeting. So that's Beth's second motion?
No voice.
Okay.
I will make that motion.
Okay, I will
Thank
second it.
you.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that one? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed.
Opposed, okay. So you don't wanna have it go to a referendum
I'm just saying
from,
opposed.
okay, opposed, okay, thanks.
So then,
All right,
then
thank you.
then you have them, and you have a motion there now. that you
Okay.
want.
Now, this is the last.
This
I
motion
don't know if I
actually
can read this one either, somebody else might read,
incorporates
I'm
the
losing
two
my
that have
voice.
already been
I'll try,
voted.
let me try. Okay, the proposed motion is to approve the call to hold a special town meeting on November 12th, 2019, with a referendum to be held on December 11th, 2019, and to send a copy of the call to each household. To act upon the resolution entitled, quote, "Resolution for the Sale to Insight Development and Werner Construction Management, LLC, of approximately 60 plus or minus acres of land within the property known as the Country Club of Woodbridge, and being a part of the property approximately described and identified as 50 Woodfield Road, Woodbridge, Connecticut, located on the westerly side of Woodfield Road, Woodbridge, Connecticut, and restricted to the construction of no more than 120 (120) age-restricted residential homes for the purchase price of $5,400,000, and further to send a copy of the call to each household with a qualified voter pursuant to Section 7-6 of the Connecticut General Statutes, amended, and the town charter. The first selectman is authorized to negotiate and enter into an agreement of sale upon the advice of council and approval of the Board of Selectmen. The sale shall be conditioned on the approval by Woodbridge voters at a town referendum and approval of purchaser receiving all necessary and customary approvals from Woodbridge land use boards and commissions as more fully set forth in the agreement of sale. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
And then there's one last motion, and that is, I think you were all handed a notice of the special town meeting.
Siri, I'm sorry, just wanna, if,
They're coming now.
Oh, okay.
Dwight, I'd be very much interested in hearing any reason you are opposed when if you are going to, only because it could impact the way I feel, depending on what your reasons are, so, just for whatever it's worth.
We can talk afterwards, we'll talk afterwards.
So the last motion is, this document that was handed out is the actual call of the, and the notice for a special town meeting, and the removal of the vote at the special town meeting to an adjourned town meeting for purposes of voting on the question at a referendum. Basically, it encompasses the two motions that have already been approved, and this is the document that actually will get mailed to electors as well as any other individuals in the town entitled to vote at a referendum. So you've looked at it. If you want Beth to read it, she can. If there's somebody that waives the reading of the motion, I think that would be okay.
So moved.
Waive the reading of the motion? So, yeah, we need
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on the waiving of the reading of the motion?
I got a question. Who is the builder? Who is it
Yeah.
Insight Development and Werner, or is there a joint
Corporation.
venture? Is there, because it just doesn't say, just says Insight and Werner, so it looks like they're separate entities.
I believe they
So I'm
mentioned that
looking,
they were
I'm just,
I agree.
I
I'm
think
just
that should
wondering
be
if that's the correct
clarified.
name.
Shouldn't that be clarified?
We do not know the actual ultimate name of the purchaser, but it will be a 50-50% ownership between
Shouldn't we say
Insight.
then maybe joint venture?
That's gonna be in the contract of sale, and the contract has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, so this,
I'm just bringing it up as
yeah,
a
this
point of order, that's all.
identifies the two entities that we're going to, that's gonna be responsible for the project, the exact detail of the name, and will be in the contract, and the Board of Selectmen will approve the
That's fine,
contract.
I just took a look. Thank you.
Okay,
So
and-
is there, going to be some type of a fact sheet
Yes.
that is available to town residents other than just something
Yeah.
like this,
There
which,
is.
So whenever you have a referendum, the state statute requires the town to produce, actually, it's the municipal clerk, the town clerk, what is known as an explanatory text on referendum questions. That will be voted on by the Board of Selectmen and signed by the Board of Selectmen at the special town meeting. And that is the explanatory text that will be available at the polls for people who come in to vote. Will be able to take a look at the text before the vote if they want. It could be distributed to voters through the mails. It could be put on the town website. But there will be an explanation, and I have a rough draft of it, but that's for the special town meeting when we will approve the explanatory text. By the way, the Board of Selectmen will approve the explanatory text. And it will go into much more detail that is in this call.
Any other questions?
so we're basically, if we vote for this, are approving the language that will actually go to town residents about the referendum.
Yes.
That this is the actual,
About the special town meeting, it's gonna invite them to a special town meeting and waive the vote at the special town meeting to go to, immediately to a referendum. in
The Board of
December.
Selectmen has already voted to
Right.
waive the vote at the special
Right.
town meeting, and this is that document. It explains what's gonna happen at the special town meeting. And it also explains who can vote and who is eligible to vote on the backside.
Right.
Do we anticipate having the name of the actual entity that will be signing the document
It will be before the special
before
town meeting
this,
for
this
certain.
goes out?
Yes, yes.
Before
yes.
this goes out?
Yes, and we may require a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to actually approve the contract. The two lawyers, the purchaser's lawyer and the town's attorney are working on the contract now. We have a meeting tomorrow with them. Hopefully, we have more information as to what it's gonna look like, and it'll be distributed to the Board of Selectmen immediately upon an agreement between the parties. And it will be available at the special town meeting for discussion.
Copies of the agreement.
Copies of the agreement.
Will it be online?
We can
Will
put
we
it
put,
online.
yeah, it would be good to put it
The
also.
contract?
Yeah, you can put, we
Okay.
can put it on.
Okay.
So the
Sorry.
particulars associated with the sale and the impact that it has on our budget and things of that nature, that's not included in anything that goes out mailed, but is that discussed or provided at the town meeting, or how are people made aware of that information?
So the impact of the budget should, I have a proposed sentence in the explanatory text, so people, when they go in to vote, will see what impact and what the money will be used to, the $5.4 million. And there is, when we did this the first time, when Ed Sheehy was first selectman, he actually sent a letter to all the townspeople explaining what the transaction would involve. There is a rule that the Board of Selectmen, the town, can, once a referendum date is set, and you've already set the date for the referendum, the town representatives cannot advocate for either an approval or a disapproval of the question, but the town can present the facts about the transaction to voters, so long as you're not taking a position, you're not telling people you should vote for this or not vote for it.
well, and I think we have a responsibility to do this in a
Yes.
pretty comprehensive way, so that people really understand, okay, what is to happen, okay, what are the benefits, what might be the downsides, so that they can make a decision. Because certainly the information and the wording here doesn't explain any of that. It
Correct.
just asks for permission to sell.
This satisfies
I mean,
the
I'm
legal.
very,
right.
yes,
Right.
legally, right.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy that we have available the prior to attorneys', opinions. I think that's really important for people to see. I learned a lot by reading that, and I think that as much information as can be provided, that is fact, would be extremely helpful.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay.
But I'm just curious as to when we're able to do that, or when that's provided.
The facts, said the letter the townspeople have described, that can be happened anytime after tonight. It should happen prior to the special town meeting, which is the way it was done in
The
2000.
dissemination of that information, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
And that doesn't constitute.
Can't constitute advocacy.
Right, doesn't-
Can't advocate, but presenting
Correct.
facts is permissible.
But I think even to be able to have a meaningful discussion at the special town meeting, this needs to be available to people prior to that.
Yes.
Yes, it should be available there for people
Right.
who haven't seen it, but we need to provide this information to town residents.
And
Couldn't
the
agree
Board of
more.
Selectmen could
Yeah.
authorize the mailing of that letter right now. You can just make a motion and authorize, because it's gonna cost money, and it can.
Well, is there any chance they can get sent out with a notice?
Can,
Could it get sent together?
can,
And then it's one mailing.
it can.
You wouldn't have to,
yes.
you wouldn't have to spend any more money.
Yep, right, Jerry?
Is there a recommendation that you,
Mailed in an envelope then.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is
the
gonna cost
notice
a
is
lot
not,
more
the
than.
notice is not on an envelope.
They're
it's on-
usually done in a
Well,
postcard.
I'm just-
when we
Yeah.
do the budget, we do a folded page, folded over.
yeah,
If this obviously is 2 pages, if we had 2 pages of
Right,
facts.
and then we can have a third page for the fact.
The facts, they're 4th
Right.
page,
Okay.
and then,
I
right,
mean,
the last
I
page is.
didn't mean an envelope, I meant it'll be a multiple
Okay.
page mailing.
But I think it would be a way to control it while still getting the information, control the cost while still getting the information out there.
so is there a date by which we think this needs to get to the town residents prior to?
It's all covered by, are you speaking of the call or the explanatory text?
The call and the explanatory text.
It's all covered by state statute and by, charter.
Can't be more than, no less than 5, no more than 30 days. So
Correct.
we have plenty of time. If it's done, next week, at the end of next week, as long as it's done well in advance of the November 12th special town meeting and people
Right.
have it, we'd be fine, and that's the goal. Certainly,
We'll get on it.
certainly the call has to be out no later than 30 days before the special town meeting. And now that it's approved,
No
we get.
earlier than 30 days, no later
Then
than
5.
5.
Right, right.
And I like to get it there by 10.
No more than 30 days.
No more than 30
Yeah,
days.
no less than 5, no more than 30.
30 days,
Yes.
right.
I mean, would it pay to consider a date by which we would like to have the mailing sent out? Okay, can we say, by November 1st?
Yes.
Sure,
Oh, yeah.
you can get that
it
done
out
by then,
before
right?
then.
Well, no, it has to include
The
Fact
a
pros
fact
and,
sheet.
Yeah.
right.
So that
Explanatory
needs to be
text.
developed, okay, right, it's
in
not just
process.
this.
It's in process.
Oh, I'm
It's-
sure it
yeah.
is, I'm sure it is, but
You
I
have to
think
say-
that we need
take
to
it
make sure.
Elections enforcement, right? the
We
fact
need to
sheet.
get I like to get those
Elections
approved by
enforcement
the
has to
state
approve it.
elections enforcement who has jurisdiction of
Yeah.
referendums to make sure there is no advocacy in there,
Okay,
but we will get
Sure.
that done right away.
so can I make a motion that we, basically send out a fact sheet with the notice of the special town meeting, by November 1st?
Yes.
Can you do that, Jerry? Can we think we can get that done?
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, okay, go
All
ahead.
right.
You can vote on the motion, right.
Okay, all right, I'll second that. Is that-
But Joe did,
Jerry does his part.
Joe did.
As long as Jerry does his part,
Are we
okay.
voting on this too,
The municipal.
Yeah, we
together
will.
with that?
You locked it.
Now, are we going to have a special meeting for the board to approve the explanatory text?
We should.
No, it's going to be done, the explanatory text will be approved at the special town meeting.
Wait a
This-
minute.
th-
No,
this-
no, no.
No,
there's
we're
two
sending-
No, we're
documents.
talking about the pros and cons. We're talking
There's
about,
two, there's two
Are we talking about a
documents.
fact sheet
There's
or
two documents. There's an explanatory text that's required by state statute for any referendum.
And
this
that's
satisfies.
this.
No,
No.
that's the notice of the
This is
special
just the
town meeting and
notice of the
referendum.
call of the special town meeting.
There is a document which will be entitled explanatory text at the polls. That explanatory text can be distributed to people, could be online, could be here, as long as it's not advocacy, and this is not advocacy. There is a second letter from the first selectman that we did it the other way. You can call it a letter from the first selectman, you can call it a fact sheet from the town of Woodbridge.
And that's what
That
we
will
need
be distributed, there is no requirement to do that under the law. There is a
Right.
requirement to do the explanatory text, but this is informational for the people of townspeople to have all the circumstances and facts about the transaction in a letter. So that's second, there'll be two opportunities for people to look at what the circumstances are in the explanatory text as well as the letter from the town.
Okay.
Okay. So it'd be the
So
the motion that-
what I had moved was that we do those two things together, okay? And
Yep.
it gets sent out by November first to town residents.
No, you're gonna do the call of the special town meeting and the referendum, and you're going to do the
fact.
the fact letter from the first selectman
Okay.
by November
Okay,
first.
that's what the list
The
is.
explanatory text will not be approved by the Board of Selectmen until the special town meeting.
Right.
Okay.
But people will have the conditions of the sale at the special, well in advance of the special town meeting, by November first. And the special town meeting is November twelfth, and the referendum is December 11th.
So do you have your, you comfortable with
I got
that
it. Yep.
motion? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And is there a second?
Yeah, I second it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
seconded it.
Any further discussion on that?
We're talking
Sandy's
about
motion.
the call.
Call, yes.
Call for the special town meeting and a fact letter from first selectman. Okay, and that will be sent out by November first.
Well, not the call, not the call. Right now,
It's
you,
not
right,
the
right,
call?
right now.
We're just voting on this
You're
right
just
now.
voting on the call, you don't need to vote on the letter. That's
We're
a
voting
separate
on the
thing.
call.
Yeah, the letter, no.
To go to a
All
special
right.
town meeting
But you
and
had
a
said
referendum.
I think we've got two separate votes here.
Yes,
The
we do.
first vote will
Sandy
be,
made, that's not Sandy's
right,
motion.
right, the
Right.
call for the special town meeting, this
Yeah,
is
And the
the first thing,
right.
okay? Is that's all we're voting on right
That
now?
needs to be approved first.
That
That does.
we have to approve it before we
Yes.
can send
Okay.
it out, okay?
Okay.
With the
All right.
stipulation that obviously it'll include, when available, the name of the
Right.
the
The name of
appropriate
the
name.
entity.
The
Right,
appropriate entity.
the legal entity will be there.
Okay,
Right.
okay. So, is there, we have a vote and a second, a call and a second on that, okay? That first vote, okay? Any other discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Moving on, the next motion will be to send out,
No, we've already done that, the
Okay.
mailing is already done. The last
we
motion.
didn't vote for the November first thing.
No, that's the fact sheet.
That's
That's
the
a
fact
letter
sheet.
from the,
What about the letter from the,
The letter from the first selectman is to be sent by November first. That doesn't need to be a motion, it could be the sense of the Board of
Yeah, just go
Selectmen, that we would like that to go out from the first selectman
Okay.
by November
That's
I
first.
can do that.
that's fine.
There's no legal requirement to do that, it's certainly good practice to do it, to
Okay.
let people know.
But I thought the motion was to have the fact sheet included with the
Yes, it
call.
was.
I thought so too.
That was the motion.
Yes,
To
once
have the
we-
fact
once
sheet
we
included
corrected
and
the
First
mailed
we
it together
approved
by
the
November
call.
first.
Yes,
Now, we wanna do a motion
Yeah.
to put the call for the special town meeting and the letter from the first
Okay.
selectman
Yes.
in a mailing by November first, is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is
Okay,
correct.
that's what I understood as well.
Yes.
and that's also
Fighting
Sandy
this,
and Joe.
stuff, okay,
Yes.
Point of order.
thank you.
No, he's not, there's no
No,
points
there's
of
no-
order, we don't have points of order in.
Not now.
point of order?
There is no
No.
points of order in the Board of Selectmen. No, no, this is not
Public
Congress.
comment, you can do it.
Excuse me?
This is not
I
Congress.
think during public comment.
No, I have a point of
No, there is no points of order. The public does not have the right to make points of order at a Board of Selectmen meeting. This is a Board of Selectmen meeting for the members of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay,
What-
so we'll call the
No, I'm
question.
not wrong.
Call the question. Okay,
I'll call it.
first,
Yes.
and Joe seconded it again?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the second motion?
So what's this motion we've been talking about?
Yeah.
Call for the special town meeting and a
Fact sheet.
first selectman letter to go out to all the members.
Special
by-
town meeting and the referendum.
No, this
Where's
is,
Yes. It's
this
in
is
the
for
notice.
for this document and the fact sheet
And if, to
Thank
go
you.
together?
to go
Right.
together
Yes, to go
by
together.
November
That's fine.
first.
Right, okay,
That's what the
Okay.
motion was for.
thank you. All in favor?
Opposed.
Okay, thank you. Anything else we have to do under
There's
item,
there's one other motion,
Okay.
and this, the state statute requires that if whenever any real estate is sold by a municipality, there must be a public hearing. And I propose to have the public hearing on the same day that we have the special town meeting, November 12th, so we can do it all together. And that, the notice of that public hearing has to be published in a newspaper 2 days apart and not more than 5 days before the public hearing. So everything will be done on November 12th. So I'd like to have a motion to the effect that the board approve a public hearing pursuant to section 7-136A of the Connecticut General Statutes to hold a public meeting for the sale of municipally owned property. That's
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I do. I just,
Okay.
I need to understand that better. I'm sorry.
So
Right,
the
I
state
just-
statute, we have, the town has an ordinance that requires a vote at a special town meeting for the sale of municipally owned property, which is what we've just taken care of.
Yes.
We know it has to be. The state also has a statute which says that any municipality or city or borough or town that sells publicly owned property must hold a public hearing before the sale of it. No vote is taken at the public hearing. It is just people to come and get information and ask questions. So I am proposing that the public hearing be held the same night as the special town meeting, so we don't have to have a second meeting. We can all get it done at the same time. And so that public hearing will be held on November 12th. The way you notice that public hearing pursuant to the state statute is by publication in a local newspaper, and that's it.
So it's to satisfy the statute.
Satisfy the
Yes.
state statute, that's all.
But the discussion is the same as the
Same,
discussion we
we'll be
would have
doing it,
for
right.
the town meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And will it be presented as the same? They're just being held at the same time?
The moderator at the special town meeting will say that we are also having a
A
public
public
hearing
hearing.
pursuant to
Okay.
7-136A.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that?
No,
Did I make a motion?
you make a motion that I
All
just.
right, I'll make that motion. Is there a
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed.
Okay, thank you. That it?
Except that now call has to be signed.
Okay.
Today?
Passing that.
I got a little notice from Katie. I guess she has to leave, wherever you are.
She's right there.
She's still here, okay. And by 6:20, okay.
I mean,
We'll do our best.
I'm just asking
So-
if I could possibly go next.
Could we possibly, we have you right after, could we do the Eagle Scout project real quick, or do you have to,
She has
are
to
you
go.
quick, or?
We can-
Oh, she has to
Yeah,
go?
let
She
her
has to go
All
5
right,
minutes.
we'll bring you up
Come on
first.
up.
Yep,
So even if I
We'll
voted
just
no,
switch,
I have to sign this charge.
we'll switch Massaro and the Eagle Scout project,
I'm asking.
Hi, thank you.
and then we'll go to public.
I'm gonna hold it
I just
for
want
now,
a
you know.
quick refresher. So I'm Katie Poole. I'm the executive director at Massaro Community Farm, which is the nonprofit organic vegetable farm that operates on the former Massaro family homestead. I co-manage that space with our farm manager, Steve Monod, who manages the growing operation. And we do this all under a long-term lease with the town of Woodbridge, between the town and our separate nonprofit tax-exempt organization. We, in addition to our growing operation, we offer education for all ages and donate at least 10% of what we grow back to the community for hunger relief. This also includes enough produce for 10 families that goes to Woodbridge Human Services each week throughout the growing season. And we do all this under a conservation easement that protects the property from development, subdivision, or commercial activity. So I can give an update later if there's any interest in how our season is going. We've actually had a great season. We'll probably extend our growing season this year because the fall weather has been so great. We continue to flourish through a number of partnerships with other community organizations. And I'm here tonight under the lease arrangement that we do have with the town, just to explain and ask for approval under paragraph 5A of the agreement to proceed with the installation of an expanded solar installation at the farm, which will offset our current and near future energy needs. So you should have all received 2 drawings. One is the addition of solar panels in addition to what's already on the 2-story dairy barn on the property. Those were installed in 2012 under First Selectman Ed Sheehy. And the second drawing was the totally new installation of solar panels on the existing farmhouse. So, questions?
I noticed the no cost is highlighted. So just to summarize, there's no cost associated with what you're
There
doing
is,
here.
that's absolutely right. It was brought to our attention and we were introduced to a partnership out of Hamden that is very interested in advocating for expanded solar energy use across the region, and are partnering with a couple other nonprofits as well. So they are bearing the cost of the installation and will basically serve as our energy provider for a period of what will probably be 6 years. And after that time, the ownership will transfer to our organization. Yeah, so we'll be energy neutral, cost neutral.
Thank you.
I will make a motion that we approve the solar installation as described by Katie at the Massaro Farm. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm assuming they're gonna have to go through all the agencies, local agencies and all that to get
That's
everything
correct,
approved,
and the
and
part-
permits and et cetera, et
Absolutely.
cetera.
Yes, and the partner agency is willing to assume that process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Good job. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Great,
Now we'll bring
thank you.
up- Good job. Now we'll bring, come on up. Thanks for waiting.
Should we go to public comment?
This is, just so to introduce you, this is approval of an Eagle Scout project, Bee Sanctuaries. Benjamin Rickel. Thank you for coming.
Be sanctuary.
I'm Benjamin Rickel. I'm a Boy Scout of Troop 907, and I'm a sophomore at Amity High School. So the goal from our project is to help stabilize the local beneficial insect population by providing a safe place for these insects, such as these are the sanctuaries, which here's a. This is not what mine's gonna look like. Mine's gonna be a lot bigger. I want to make a couple of them and place them around Woodbridge. So these insects will sleep in here and they'll lay their eggs in here, and so it'll help the insect population grow. So I'm hoping it'll affect Woodbridge by increasing these insects to help pollinate our flowers, fruit, and vegetables. So I want to put them at the community gardens at near the Fitzgerald walking trail. Behind the Darling House, there's the walking trail with the field. At Alice Newton Memorial Park meadow, the meadow in there. Lucy Henny Family Farms, potentially Camp Whiting area, and at the intersection of between Clark Road and Amity Road, there's a farm over there at 420 Amity Road. I'm not sure the name of it, but I want to donate some there too. What? Okay, thank you. So what I need is I want to begin fundraising this project, and I want to collect donations from like big companies such as like Home Depot and like Lowe's for materials, and I'm not sure about this yet, but if it comes down to it, I may need funding from the town. So, but I'm not sure yet. But
Ooh, tough. Okay.
I think it's a wonderful project.
I do too.
I think it's a wonderful project.
I would like to know the
I'm very happy
timeline.
that
I
you're
think it's
taking this
great.
on.
What is your timeline?
the timeline of
Yeah,
like
when
my
you get
progress.
started, perhaps when you finish.
I'm hoping.
Ballpark.
I don't know how much I'm going to achieve this, but I'm hoping around December is when I want to finish.
Okay.
But that could vary a lot.
Okay.
So yeah.
I think this is fantastic. Okay.
What's the timing that you need in terms of when these need to actually be out there for the bees to populate them?
I don't know if I'll be able to have them out before they start they don't hibernate, but I mean before they go away for the winter. So but
Right.
they stay in here especially during the winter. So I would want to put them up.
Spring.
Yeah. So I want to have them up for spring at least,
Yeah.
so then they could have a new place. So
Good.
yeah.
And for any of the farms that you mentioned,
Yeah.
will you seek approval from them?
Yeah,
to
the private owners I will reach out to.
Okay.
Yeah, we
I'll make a
can't, we
motion.
can't give permission for the, you know,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can
I
only give
understand
permission for town
I
property.
mean for your
so-
town property.
Right,
but-
okay.
Yeah,
All right,
I'll
thank
move,
you.
I'll move that we accept this project.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
thank you. I think it's great.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank
Thank you.
you. All in favor?
I have
Oh,
one more,
wait,
I have one
sorry.
more question.
Yeah.
So there's lots of beehives at Massaro Farm.
Yeah, that's why
Are
I
you
didn't choose
cool-
that one.
Right, but are you kind of coordinating this in terms of locations for kind of pollination avenues, I'll call them?
Not really. I'm really looking for areas that don't have specific things put in for them, such as Massaro Farm, because they have already honeybees, and they're not really much of a worry right now. So
Okay.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good.
Good luck. Thank you.
Good.
Very good.
That's good.
Sorry, I should have passed that one.
Okay.
It's a nice project.
We've
Really
gotten
nice
through, I
project.
think we'll move the liaison reports till after public comments, if you don't mind, guys.
No, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll begin with public comments, and I apologize again for my voice. I don't know what's wrong. Okay. Absolutely. Name and address, please, and be respectful of everybody's time.
You know where I live.
Well, okay.
Adrian Michi Smith, 17 Ansonia Road.
Thank you, and I would ask everyone to be respectful of each other and not speak during, for example, when you're speaking, we'll be quiet and listen, and everybody should listen to each other. We are all Woodbridge neighbors, and please try to keep it to 2 minutes or less, please, in
That's gonna be
respect, because we
tough.
have a huge agenda tonight.
I know we do. I'll try to
Thank you
be-
so much.
I'm going to speak, try to speak as quickly as I can. Number one, I agree with Ms. Stein that people need to know the facts. With all due respect to the board, I know that most of the board members are in favor of the development of the Country Club of Woodbridge, so I'm a little bit worried about what this fact sheet's going to say. In terms of paying off the debt, that's true. However, the debt is costing people $40 per capita a year. That's the total cost. That's not affecting our taxes. Second of all, it says that according to, and I also don't want to cast shade on Mr. St. Pierre's integrity. I think he's a really nice guy, and he's probably very honest. But I'm starting to go to these commission meetings where he's showing up and whatnot, and his benefits to the town are very questionable. $1.7 million. Every single one of these units has to be sold for $500,000. Our home rates in this town are depressed. I don't think I can sell my house now. I certainly can't afford to buy for what I could have sold it for a few years ago, and I certainly can't afford to buy a place over there. And my husband and I are fairly comfortable. So I don't know. This $1.7 million is a very, very. We have to assume that all the units will be sold, and that they'll be sold for close to $500,000, and that's going to take a long time. We've all seen what's happened down at in Orange. I was at the Economic Development Commission meeting, and I brought up the question of what the, I understand that 30 people have moved out of town. How much time do I have? Because I got a lot to say. No, this is true. Mika and I talked about the relative mill rates of the other towns, surrounding towns, which have 55 and older communities. The relative mill rates are 5 to 17 or 18 points lower than Woodbridge, which comes out to be 11 to 41% lower than our mill rate. Now, somebody's going to say, well, that's probably because they have these 55 and older communities there. However, we are crunching numbers. We're still working on it, and I don't believe that that's why. So please keep this in mind. I can't imagine why somebody would want to sell their house that used to be worth $500,000 here, is now worth $300,000, and would want to stay in a town where the mill rate is 11 to 41% higher than it is elsewhere. So please keep that in mind. The big thing, though, is zoning. These are both out again. I'm trying to be very, very calm. My husband does not come to these meetings because he's a town attorney in 2 other towns. He's at a town town council meeting in another town as we speak. So I'm the one that comes to these meetings. My husband is an environmental attorney and a town attorney, and he also was on the town planning and zoning board for many, many years. He claims that whatever these say, whatever Councilor Weiner says, he and Jerry have had numerous discussions together, that if this zoning change goes through, it's going to make all the other areas in town that are such as Oak Lane, the place across the street, help me out here, girls, Homewood Acres, Mary Mountain Farm, these places are all going to be vulnerable to the same zoning changes. We are one of the few towns around here that has this kind of a character. I think you ought to think about that long and hard. Do I still have a few seconds?
I would ask that we not talk to each other, please.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
I just asked for a
It's
little
okay,
back
but,
up here.
you know.
I have believed for a long time, that this town, this administration and the last administration have done nothing to consider other possibilities. Unfortunately, I run a business right now, and I'm working. If I wasn't working, I would be happy to step up and say, let's get a crew of people, a bunch of, let's get a committee of people to look into what other towns who have had golf courses like this do, other alternatives. You keep saying let the voters decide. The voters have decided several times not to have development on this property.
I will tell you, we've had one referendum on this property.
Okay, one referendum.
One.
It went down.
Yeah.
The voters
You're right.
decided. Why do we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again? And please consider what it's going to do to the character of this town. As you know, I'm not done.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Debbie Barberi, Debbie Brander Barberi, 10 October Hill Road. I've never made public comment before, so correct me if any of my facts are wrong, but I wanted to express my support for the development project to be known as Wood Valley Estates. I am a member of the Economic Development Commission, and I participated in watched the presentation made last week, and there were a couple of points that I thought were very, very positive that I wanted to just reiterate. Insight is only looking to purchase 60 plus or minus acres, and the remaining 100 acres can be conserved for recreational use or protected in some way. And I think that's a win-win, that a lot of people are either all for conservation or all for development. And I think this is a nice, happy medium for those residents looking to keep the property in as much natural state as possible, but also still be able to vote in favor of the development. I personally would like to see those remaining 100 plus or minus acres protected in some way, if that can be part of the contract. The $1 million in revenue after the loan is repaid, I think, is important, as well as the building fees along the way with digging and construction. That's so much money for our town, and given our aggressive increases in the property taxes over the years, I welcome this opportunity to halt my property tax pains, and perhaps this could also alleviate some of our mill rate increases over time, because we are higher, as we know, than other towns, and maybe that can also stop. I thought the property layout was very thoughtful, as it maintains a lot of the historic charm of the golf course, building on the fairways, retaining many of the trees. And what I didn't know, which I appreciated, was that the properties were going to be approximately half an acre each, with a variety of styles. So if you compare it to Oxford Greens or Oronoque or Fieldstone, these properties are much more attractive. I think a lot of Yale affiliates would move in, empty nesters and downsizers, and it doesn't have to be from just Woodbridge. I don't think that's the point. I think getting people, new residents, the diversity, whether they're from New York or the people are coming to town to be near their grandchildren from Fairfield County or other parts of Connecticut, I think it's a moot point to say that not everyone in Woodbridge can sell their house and live there. It's just not the way the world works. So, some yes and some no. What I also appreciate is that Mr. St. Pierre stated that his company would rehab the dilapidated pool, demolish the old clubhouse, and construct a new pool house with locker rooms and a snack bar. And we all know that Woodbridge could never afford to do that. It creates a wonderful summer space for our residents, especially younger families. So it's interesting that this over 55 community could really service our young families with this wonderful summer space. Mr. St. Pierre also mentioned he would consider building a pavilion and assist with some of the cart path repair, which I would recommend if there's any way to add that into the contract. I take his word on it and build it in, because we don't have a lot of gathering spaces, and to have a pavilion there where people can picnic before or after using the trails or have small birthday parties by the pool, I think there's so many positive components to this. And I also don't believe a better offer will come our way. So I know there's been other... Hi, I'm sorry. Did you want to go again? No, I don't. Okay. So I think we've seen a lot of... I've lived in town. I grew up here. I moved away for a while, and I came back. I've seen this property become dilapidated, so I think now is the time to welcome this development. I think we should welcome the sale revenue. I think we should welcome the property tax revenue, the building permit revenue, and we should welcome each other there on the trails and by the new pool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phyllis Janelle, 30 Richard Street Drive. Whatever happens to this property, I urge you to do something with the 90 acres. I have asked you now for 4 years. I am not convinced that if you sell this property for $5.5 million, who is going to take care of the other 90 acres? Somewhere along the line, it's not fair to say to the townspeople, we'll make it a park. You can't make it a park. It's going to cost thousands of dollars before you even begin to clear it. So I really, whatever happens, happens, but you have to be fair to the townspeople and tell them exactly what, when you say we'll make it a park, there is no park there to be had. It will take more time, more money, more whatever. I'm hoping there will be a park. I'm hoping there will be walking trails. I'm hoping there will be fishing. I'm hoping all those little things that were in that flyer that came home will happen. It will not happen unless it is in a contract, and a contract that the town makes to the townspeople. It is unfair to say we're going to have a park. You cannot have a park without putting more money into it than I've seen anybody want to put into it for the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ellen Scalatar. I live at 1265 Racebrook Road, and I was here this evening in my capacity as a member of the Board of Finance at Beth's invitation to see the Amity presentation, which I appreciated and thought I would stay a little bit longer. So I'd just like to make 3 comments, 3 different areas. First, I totally associate my comments on the country club with Debbie Brander's. I think she made a really compelling case for developing the property and for the benefits to the town. I also commend the board for bringing this finally to the town for a vote. It's very important. It's one of the few areas where we can make a difference in the mill rate and ultimately, I believe, the property values in the town of Woodbridge. So thank you all for that. Secondly, I was listening to the Boy Scout presentation on bees, and I happened to just read that bees have been declared to be the most important living being on Earth. So I wanted to say how apt that was. And finally, I say this without criticism, but I was struck by the conversation between Mika and Dwight when Mika asked Dwight his reason for not voting. And totally, you don't have to give a reason. But to say we'll discuss it outside the meeting strikes me as either a technical violation of freedom of information, but certainly a violation of the spirit of the law. And I don't say that to give you a hard time, but to encourage open dialogue and discussion. It's really contrary to what we've worked so hard for in the state of Connecticut, to have public meetings and public information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brookwood Drive. Sandy, thank you for your thoughtful comments. I totally appreciated them. Where shall I begin in my 2+ minutes? Let's let the voters decide, which is obviously the mantra here now, as opposed to Woodbridge, we can do better. I think if you're going to send information out to townspeople, it needs to be accurate information. And from everything I have read thus far, it is very slanted. And if people really don't do a lot of research, they're going to go face value. They have a nice person who's their first selectman, and if it's not in my backyard, it's okay. And the Democrats are in control, and the town is a Democratic Party, so that's okay. But I think there has to be some honesty here, and I'm finding that lacking. I think what has been presented thus far is slanted. I think the first thing is, and Jerry said it, as long as you don't touch the remaining property, you don't have to worry about any kind of remediation. Well, does that immediately draw to mind, well, if this sells, then we're going to sell off the next parcel because they'll do remediation, et cetera, until the entire parcel is gone. What was brought up here in terms of with Phyllis, you're not going to have that. There was $10,000 that was voted on. I think it was either in the May or June, because David was still on the board, was voted on to do mowing on the property. I'm sorry? And tree clearing. That never occurred. So I guess my question is, where did the 10 grand go that was supposed to be going there? But let's forget that.
Is Adam still here?
The big thing that came out this evening that kind of grabbed my attention was the 50-50, and I had actually asked St. Pierre about this. Are they 50-50 him and Werner? How is that going to work? And now we're told that this paper that is coming out is not even going to specify whose project is it. Is it Brian who's traveling with the Werners? Or is it the other way around? Is it in fact 50-50? And again, if this project were to tank, who does the town go after? And if they have to pay their creditors, what happens to the town? So we could be behind the 8 ball again. I'm a little confused about that. And I think the townspeople should know that before something goes to a vote, a referendum, a letter, or anything else, don't you think you guys should know exactly what you want to do with all of it and know who's leading is the horse in front of the cart? Is the cart in front of the horse? Because to have the two of them, it doesn't make any sense. There has to be a lead person. If it's 50-50, it has to be stated so. And I believe Jerry did not say that would be the case, at least not at this point, because you don't know what it's going to be. And that tells me that they don't have a clue as to what's going on. The gentleman presents himself as an architect. He is not an architect. If you look him up, he is basically a sole proprietor. He's a person of one. When I asked him, he said he had 2 architects working for him. I wanted to know if it was on an as-needed basis or if they were on the payroll. He's not what he purports himself to be, nor has he done projects of this scale. And Werner has done construction, but they are not, and they acknowledged it, Max acknowledged it when we were at the last meeting. They have not done this either. So can you please rethink what you're going into before you're so fast to raise your hand to say, I'm for it? It's not Democrat versus Republican. It's what the townspeople, what's best for us as residents, and why the reason we moved here. Yes, the school system, but it was a quality of life. And I'm so sorry. I believe this is going to be affected in a very detrimental way.
Laura Torrance, Vernon Court. First, I want to say One Big Dog and the animal shelter have been wonderful. We've made a lot of progress. Come down and visit. The back of the property looks beautiful. We're raising money. We have a lot of donations that are coming in. So it's wonderful. Thank you all here for your support for that. Now, the reason I'm here this evening is to express my support for something else in town, which is Conan Farm at 1907 Litchfield Turnpike. It's a farm that's run by Ethan Snyder. He's an organic farmer who lives in the caretaker's cottage at the Thomas Darling House. This property has not been farmed since the 1780s by the Darlings themselves. Ethan was chosen by Don Menzies and his board in 2014 to live and farm there. Unfortunately for us, after 21 years as the president of the Historical Society, Don retired in 2015. Now the current administration has decided that they no longer want a farmer and a caretaker to be the same person on the property. This is impossible for him to farm, and it's not realistic for Ethan to be in 2 different places. He has spent so much time improving the soil and all aspects of the property, a lot of it out of his own pocket. For almost 5 years, he was expected to be the museum caretaker, the groundskeeper, the 24/7 security guard, and to pay $1,000 per month to rent an apartment that has never been updated or maintained for over 30 years. The house and grounds are owned by the town of Woodbridge, although the Historical Society are the stewards and manage the house and grounds. They are responsible to maintain it. They receive rent and monies and grants and donations, and they pay $1 per year to the town of Woodbridge. The property is only used 9 to 10 times per year. I have to ask myself why such a beautiful property and town asset is only used that many times and vacant most of the time. Ethan has only added to the value of the community and the property. We need him to continue his work and grow the farm with a long-term goal for sustaining it into the future. If this house is to survive, we must welcome new ideas, make it self-sustainable, and improve a wonderful but very old property. I want to remind the Woodbridge Historical Society that on their website it says, we want to promote the spirit of community. I think they forgot that saying, because we need to work as a community together to grow and flourish and make the Thomas Darling House all that it can be. It's really special, and I think we've forgotten that by trying to take sides and go against someone who is such a gift to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Just state your name and address, sorry.
My name's
Thank you.
Michael Holland. I live at 49 Rock Hill Road. I'm a member of the Economic Development Commission, so I will state up for the new plan for the country club. I'm not going to reiterate a lot of the points that were made. The only one that I thought that was interesting in some of the debate that happened in our commission meeting was that I think a lot of us understand that our mill rate is higher than a lot of the towns in the area, and one of the things that's become interesting in looking at it, and the debate early in the week made me look up some of the numbers and consider it, was that, you know, it's tough given the size of our town and the lack of non-residential development within it to actually move the needle on the mill rate, right? It's just and the commission has been looking at it a lot, and I have personally as well. And I think one of the things that became interesting as we brought up the numbers for the surrounding towns was that, you know, again, there are a lot of issues with the proposal that we need to work through as a town before we accept it. But if it were to succeed, it could have a quite meaningful effect on our mill rate by pushing it down almost as much, down to 58, one of those kinds of numbers. Now, again, there are a lot of reasons why we may or may not agree that that's going to happen, but it's an opportunity for us to actually have a meaningful effect on the mill rate. And the one part of that I think that's interesting for us to consider is that this is a compounding effect. One of the reasons that we have issues attracting people to the town for residential and commercial properties is the mill rate. Our ability to affect the mill rate is down. So if we were able to push the mill rate down a couple of points, we would be more competitive with the next thing we try to do as a town, whether it's commercial real estate or residential. So I think one of the issues that I wanted to bring up, and I wanted the selectmen to consider, is that, you know, some of this is that we need to invest in the opportunity to keep moving the mill rate down and generating more and more economic development in the town. So that was the only point that I had. Again, I recognize some of the concerns about it, and I share a number of them. But I think we need to realize that where the town is, we may need to swing for the fence for some things. Now, this may or may not be it, and I think we need to consider those, but there's a double benefit to this project if it can succeed that I think we need to consider carefully. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea Urbano, 52 North Pease Road. I have two different topics. One, I'll focus on the country club. And all I ask is that you make no decisions out of fear of not having a better option come along. Doing so leads to short-term decision-making that can have long-term consequences, unknown consequences. I work for the state of Connecticut's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. I support development. My father is a developer, and I know the benefit that it has to communities in multiple ways. But we need to make smart decisions about that. And as a state employee, we deal with a lot of municipalities and private landowners that are struggling with the consequences of fragmentation. They are detrimental and compromise ecological, social, and economic services. And I do have information that I can provide you, if interested, on how maintaining land as forest land, if you were to let this space recover into forest land, which it would do naturally, and even certain forms of open space is actually less of a tax burden than some forms of development, even 55 and plus. So I will provide with you that information if you're interested. But the main reason I am here is to support Ethan Schneider and Cohen Farms. I am also a young farmer, and I find Ethan's role in this farm to be imperative for our health and for our community. Ethan is exceptionally bright and skilled in implementing practices like integrated pest management, farming very sustainably and wisely, and providing healthy local food to a large sector of Woodbridge residents and beyond the scope of Woodbridge. Having Ethan in Woodbridge would help me as a farmer and my other young farmers and old farmers alike. He's an essential part of the community. I can't speak much to the Darling House and their relationship, but I do believe in our ability to make things work. And when we already have such a strong and beautiful thing in place like Cohen Farms, it would be a real detriment and shame to lose it. It's one thing among many in Woodbridge that I am proud of. And I hope not to see that go. So I am against the development of the country club, and I am for the maintenance of Cohen Farm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Javier Vilas. I'll tell you that I live on the corner of Ansonia and Johnson Road, so it's technically Ansonia, but we face Johnson, and for the fourth time in about 18 months, there's been a major accident at that intersection. This last one was heard from about 6 blocks away. Having the opportunity to see that intersection every single day, I see large beer delivery trucks and you name it plow through that intersection at 35 miles an hour plus. Both of the entrances to the intersection go over hills, so they're a little bit blind. And I think it would be awesome for the safety of the dozens of children that live in that neighborhood for us to do something, put some red flashing lights on the stop signs, something to alert people that are not familiar with that intersection that there is a traffic control up there and there are people that could die if you run the stop sign. So I would appreciate anything that you as the town administration could do to help in that regard. Obviously,
we usually don't comment, but have you brought this to the traffic authority?
I have
Woodbridge
not, and
Police?
now I will.
Okay,
Thank
sorry.
you, thank you.
They will look into that for you for sure.
I appreciate the direction.
And the more the people you can get, the better to come and speak to it okay.
Thank you.
Sure, sorry.
Obviously, I also live across the street from what used to be the Woodbridge Country Club. And I find it very interesting that this administration and past administrations are treating the 55 and over development as a mandate from the population. All that seems to stem from the survey that was sent out in 2017, where actually more people opposed the development of 55 and over than supported it. So there's very little statistical conclusion you could draw from that, but it appears that since we picked one of the least offensive solutions to move forward with, that we're treating that as a mandate and we're marching forward when actually more people oppose it than support it. It's a little bit interesting that tonight I was pleased to see some of my neighbors come forward to actually support this, because up until this night, I have not heard a single soul come forward in support of that. Again, you could treat that as anecdotal evidence. I do not. I see it as an indication of what the town thinks. I also find it interesting that since the initial proposal, the initial proposal included golf, subsequent iterations of the proposal did not. When I asked Mr. St. Pierre why they did not, he said it was at the request of the first selectman. So whether that's true or not, that's what he told me.
That is not true.
Again, I'm not speaking as to the veracity. This is what he told me directly. We had a performing golf course there prior to us shutting it down. In other words, it was not making a lot of money, but it made some dollars. And now we've completely erased that side from the equation, and we're marching full in with the over 55 development. We've also ignored the fact that Mr. St. Pierre has had to scramble to find funding after his first partnership failed. We're completely glossing over that fact and almost hiding it from public discourse. I find that, being in the field, almost a fiduciary failure to gloss over that and not look into it a little bit further. Who are we actually going to go into business with? If we're going to sell our souls to the devil, we should know the details of the deal. It's also a fallacy to believe that people are moving out of Woodbridge because there is no over 55 development available in Woodbridge. I find it much more highly likely that they are moving out of Woodbridge to escape the 20th highest mill rate in the state of Connecticut, last time I checked. That, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that we all need to recognize what it is, and brings me to words that were spoken tonight by the first selectman. She said, in these tight financial times, that is money that could be used elsewhere in terms of supporting the development. It smells like that is the impetus for this project, not to reduce our mill rate, which, as the gentleman from the Economic Development Council just said, probably is not going to have any impact on our mill rate. That is what everyone in this room wants to know, what's going to happen to our mill rate, and it has not been discussed.
He didn't say that. It had the potential to impact.
He said it materially had probably no
He said a
chance to
couple of
impact the
points.
mill rate.
No, he
It's
said-
got a chance to significantly impact if everything goes right, but Mr. St. Pierre himself has said in past presentations that it's probably not going to impact the mill rate. So my point here is that on this topic specifically, please give us more facts. The town wants to know specifically, how is this going to affect the mill rate? That I think is going to be the determining factor on whether this project is going to be, or whether the vote, referendum, whatever, is going to be successful or not. Because if we're going to sell the soul to the devil, I at least want to get some kind of benefit out of, if we're going to rape that property. Pardon my use of that word. Okay? Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Sure.
See if anyone
But is there anyone else that has to come up? Okay, come on up.
Good evening. I think you all know me, but Alexia Belpron, the president of the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society, 478 Main Street, Portland. I'm very happy that the Good to Great grant is on the agenda. I hope you guys are as excited as we are about the project, but there are some other crucial steps that have to happen in order for us to go forward, and I think they're so important that we wrote them down for you. I have letters for all of you because there's also time constraints related to those. I don't know if you're able to discuss any of those tonight. If you are, we're here to answer questions. We're always here to answer questions, and we're here to answer any questions pertaining to any of the issues that anybody else brings up. So I will give you the letters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Anyone else? Come on, Leland.
Leland Torrance, 17 Vernon Court. I always like to thank all you volunteers for doing what you're doing. So I have a lot of things to say about the Thomas Darling property, but I'm not going to do it tonight because it's not on the agenda. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't want to waste your time with that. What I do want to do is I want to address what is on the agenda. Most of you who know me know that I prefer to be in the engine room. I do ruffle feathers because I expect excellence in everything I work on. I am very disappointed that the society fired me for my 16 years working pro bono, doing surveys, specifications, bidding, assisting with grants, construction managing almost all the restoration projects during that time, and since 2011 doing the capital budgets for the society to present to the Board of Selectmen. I had been working for almost a year putting together a vision plan for the entire 157 acres of the Thomas Darling property, including the 2.5 acres managed by the society. In February, I met with Rick Weiss, architect, a long-term board member of the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, to tour the museum and grounds. He suggested we first apply for the Historic Preservation Technical Assistant Grant, known as a HEPTAG, which is to help communities plan for preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation of historic properties. He suggested several other grants, including the Good to Great grant, and offered to assist pro bono. He warned that we should plan carefully, as you could only get one award through the Good to Great program. In March of this year, I invited Brad Scheid, circuit rider, to the Trust to visit the museum and suggest grants that would be available to the society or town. Mary Dean and Alexis Belperon attended the meeting. Brad suggested a top priority to install a misting system for fire protection. It is unfortunate that the society has rushed this grant process and not waited a year, as the maximum grant is for $150,000. In fact, the first select woman asked that they delay the grant application. The society did not even come to the Board of Selectmen to present the idea, which is required based on their management agreement with the town. In a hurry to look good, potentially $90,000 has been left on the table. It is important to note that no one on the team that prepared the grant is a professional in design, planning, or historic architecture, and no professionals are listed on the application as consultants. I respect the good job of the volunteers doing Tavern Night. It is unique and a wonderful experience. I feel passionate about the possibilities for the property and the museum. I question the unprofessional behavior with which the leadership has treated their caretaker and former preservation expert, me. In 2018, the museum averaged just 1.5 visitors a day. This does not seem either good or great. That all being said, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and I hope that you guys approve this grant tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, David Lober, 35 Wepalog Road. I would like to put to rest this fiction of our mill rate going down with the sale of the property for several reasons. Number one, the quote has been $1.5 to $1.7 million in taxes that will be generated by this property, which is roughly $14,000 for a $500,000 valuation, which makes sense. But when you look at a balance sheet, you look at the net. 1.7 is not the net. 1.7 is the gross. We are not taking into account the cost of selling an existing house in Woodbridge to a family with children. One child costs $17,000. $14,000 is not going to offset that. Two children cost $34,000, which means that every house that we sell to a Woodbridge resident, every house we sell from a Woodbridge resident to the country club is going to cost $20,000 net. Now, if you do the math and you figure a third of those houses, which is about 40 houses, are sold to people in Woodbridge, it will cost about $1.3 million. So we really haven't gotten a net of $1.5 million. The second thing is, once we sell that property, that $5.4 million will be used to pay down the debt. It will be gone. There will be some money left over. I'm not going to get into what was going to happen with that money. However, Beth quoted a figure of $6.4 million in additional bonding. Those figures actually come from the capital budget. You can all read it for yourself. It's on page 133 in a tiny little footnote that has $5 million for the police station and $1.4 million additional dollars for the old firehouse. I think that's correct. Okay.
If the voters choose to do so.
They have to be voted on, but they're
Correct.
in the pipeline. These are anticipated expenses. Also, we had a nice presentation from Amity High School for a cost of $6.7 million. Now, I think I also heard they said they wanted that bonded over 10 years. Is that correct? Yeah, okay.
I think I
So
heard that
if you
too.
look at $6.7 million and you say that we have a third of that, which is, I don't know, 2.2, 2.3, 2.2. We're going to be responsible for about $350,000 in servicing that debt. So our mill rate is right back up. So that's the first point that I want to make. The second point that I wanted to make had to do with the fact sheet. Now, facts are peculiar things. If you put them all out there, people can decide. If you put out just your, a version of the facts, then, you kind of skew the, you skew the situation. And, people will not delve into this stuff. And if they're just given the superficial facts on one side of the issue, it's going to sway the vote. And I think that is not a proper thing to do. The other thing is, as I look on this agenda, and I'm sure Jerry's going to tell me that I'm wrong, item number 4 says, former Country Club of Woodbridge Development discuss date of special town meeting / referendum and action as appropriate. I see nothing in there about putting out a fact sheet or taking a vote to generate a fact sheet, and that's not on the agenda, so I think that was an illegal maneuver, and I think that has to be taken out. And the third,
I think you're wrong.
well, I know, of course you can tell me I'm wrong, but, that's a matter of opinion. Maybe not a matter of fact, but certainly a matter of opinion. And the third thing that I wanted to talk about was this Thomas Darling house. And the thing that troubles me about this house is not the fact that there's a farm there, and it's not the fact that there's so much of an issue with the caretaker, which of course there is, but the fact that now we have the first selectman tying herself up in knots to put in an expensive security system because the caretaker may or may not be trustworthy. Now, I think everybody should realize that we rent out farm leases for $10. That's correct, is it $10? $10, okay. So for $10, we are now tying ourselves up in knots, as I say, to deal with this tenant that the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society says is not an appropriate tenant. There's nothing to say that the tenant cannot keep his farm lease and farm that land. Farmers do farm remote sections of land, but you have conflated these two things, and now we're stuck with this situation. I think if you're going to put thousands of dollars in investment or more into a security system, you really have to think hard at why you're doing it. And
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. You got like 10 seconds, because we've got hours, please.
First of all, I want to confirm what Javi said, Mr. Javier.
Okay.
Said earlier. I have heard Mr. St. Pierre say that he does not expect this project to lower our mill rate. Second of all, I also said at the beginning of this meeting that I don't want to put shade in his character. That I think he's a really nice guy, and I think he's honest and all that. But now I'm very concerned that people have heard him say that you said that. What did you say? What did you not say? That you don't want the golf course there? You said you didn't say that, and he's telling people that you did.
He said it to me too.
This is a big concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big concern, Beth.
Okay, we'll fix that. Thank you. Muffy, okay.
I'd just like to clear up one point from a couple of speakers ago. I'm Martha German from 1170 Johnson Road, and I am on the board of the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society. And Ms. Urbano, who spoke a short time ago, seemed to be indicating that we have some sort of disagreement with Ethan in farming. We have no such disagreement. We are happy to have him farm there. We have relieved him of his duties as caretaker. We would like to have our caretaker building back again to be able to put in a new caretaker, but we are fine with him farming and having his Cohen farm. So I think I will call her up too and make sure that she understands that, because she seemed to be operating under a misconception. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll move along back to item 6, which is liaison reports, and we'll start with Sandy.
I was not able to attend the Library Commission or the Woodbridge Board of Ed. Sorry.
Joe.
Thank you. In regards to the Police Commission meeting earlier in the month, Insight made their presentation at the meeting. Also, the chief mentioned that the union contract was settled, which was later approved by this board. And also, he announced that there was an anonymous donor who presented a 9/11 flag with the names of the victims from the state to the department. And he also announced that November is the No Shave Month, which is a charity project by the policemen to give to men's, I believe, illness. And that was the Police Commission. In regards to town planning and zoning, who met on October 7th, the Church of New Haven applied for a special permit for a freestanding sign. That was approved. They are on 918 Greenway Road. It was unanimously approved. Also, it was the consensus of commission members to schedule public hearings on 2 applications which were received at the meeting. One is for a bed and breakfast at 555 Amity Road, and the other one is for a special permit for the use of the building at 15 Lunar Drive, Woodbridge Properties, by Bravo Goalkeeping for teaching goalkeeping skills. There was a designation of a TPZ member to serve as a liaison to the Publicly Owned Properties Commission, CUPO, and that individual was Chairman Klee. And that's basically a summary of the 2 meetings.
Thank you. Mika.
I did meet for the Recreation Commission meeting. There were a couple of things. Betsy, they did want to reach out to you and see if there's any potential for them to have additional spacing on the newsletter or some way online. I believe Jim may have reached out. If he hasn't, he indicated. Okay. They did want to also discuss, they talked about the old firehouse and see what the timeline was in their interest in that, is obviously as relates to the fitness center. So the October, Beth mentioned earlier, the October Fallapalooza event, the trail events, kids hike and 25-mile bike ride, as well as a 5K race. That's all being scheduled during, on October 19th, actually. That's a particular day of that event specifically. They are going to open up swim lessons to the town on Saturdays. These are private lessons. And from a financial standpoint, the good thing with private lessons is you only pay if there's people who take them up. So there's good opportunity for either increasing their fee, their revenue, and or controlling it so that they don't get less. Those are some flyers that they're going to put out there. The concert series raised $3,620 in sponsors. The town portion was less than $5,000 this year, and they've calculated about 3,100 attendees for the concerts, which they felt was a great success and worked out very, very well. The road race was held on October 5th. Very, very good volunteer. It was a little lighter than normal. I think there was a conflict with the middle school having an event on the same day, but I think they'll coordinate. Yeah, they'll coordinate that for next time so that doesn't occur. They did also vote to sponsor a truck at the Truck or Treat, and I believe they've already contacted you, Tony, in regard to the 3 trailers that they're looking to purchase versus lease. So And that was the Board of, and then I also met with the Economic Development Commission. As stated by some of the members of the commission, there was a presentation done by Insight, and it was conducted as a Q&A session. So they presented their information, and public comment was open to whoever wanted to make questions, as well as the commission, who asked some very good questions, and I think compiled some useful information from their perspective in terms of considering what the proposal was, and you heard from a couple of them today. In addition, they've settled on an EDC mission statement, and they're working on prioritizing very specific goals that they will be working on over the course of the next year, short-term, long-term, and medium-range goals. That's it.
Thank you. Dwight?
Yes. First of all, I just want to address Mika, because I should have addressed it at the time he asked it, but the reasons I didn't vote for it is I still have issues with Inland and Werner. They still haven't gotten back to me on a lot of the information I asked for. I've been waiting for that, and I'm deeply concerned on the zoning issue. You know, I'm really concerned that it is going to spiral into issues down the road if they allow this to happen on here. So those are the two main issues I am. But one of the main ones is I'm still waiting on issues. I'm still waiting on information from those guys, so I haven't gotten it yet.
In that regard, I did reach out to Max Warner, and I did indicate to him that you were looking, so if you call him, he should be looking for your call, because I indicated to him.
I
was
sent
able to
him an
reach
email. I sent him an email along with saying I'm still looking for information. I haven't heard back.
I just met with him, I'm going to say, at the meeting that we had on October 10th, so I don't know if yours was before or after, but I just wanted to let you know that he's
I'm just
looking
not a
for
person.
call.
I'm just not a person to go chase things and continue to chase. If I sent
Understood.
something, I'm assuming we're going to get the courtesy of a response. So,
Thank you.
Inland Wetlands, I attended on September 18th. They had a very short meeting. They only had 4 members present. They only addressed the site. They set up a site visit to review dredging of a pond on somebody's neighborhood. And old business, they reviewed a partial site plan to see if the partial can have a house built on it. And that's still ongoing. So that was just a half-hour meeting real quick. Went to Human Services on October 7th. Again, they talked about the dinner, which was a huge success, as Beth mentioned earlier. And they did make a little bit more money this year than last year, which was a good thing. And I want to thank everybody who served. Sandy, Joe, me, myself,
No,
we all.
I didn't.
No, but we did serve, so it was a great thing, so it was really good. They're gonna start work on their 6-year capital budget. They've already started work on that. They've hired a youth services coordinator to work with Nancy Fund. She's gonna be, apparently this person's gonna be working 19 hours a week, and it's from September through May. I guess an agreement was signed by Beth for a new vehicle, and I guess that's in the works. So they talked about that, and they're excited to get that. Woodbridge Center Projects is ongoing. They actually did take a photo of the murals in the senior center that were on the wall.
I think it's a grant for the vehicle.
It is.
It's
It
not a
is,
vehicle.
right, but
They
it's
just
a
signed
grant, but,
yeah.
right, but they are very
They
excited.
applied
that-
for a grant,
Yeah.
and I just had to sign it authorizing them to go forward and get the
Okay.
vehicle.
Okay.
I wasn't spending money.
Okay, talking about the photo was taken of the murals, and they had them framed, and they're absolutely unbelievable. If you've seen them, it looks like they're real. Looks like a painting, so it came out really good. So it looks really good. They're gearing up to assist seniors for their Medicare supplement in their Part D RX. So they have people available to meet with them, to get them online, to help them get whatever they need. And that'll be through October 7th through December 15th. 87 students attended the event, the middle school, back on September 20th. 7th and 8th graders, great time. There's another event coming up on Friday, October 25th at the middle school for all 7th and 8th graders, Halloween party. Costumes, they're gonna have events, contests and all that stuff, so, And they're talking with Orange, and they're looking to hold a dance for all the 8th graders from all 3 towns in the near future at Amity High School. There isn't any date set yet, but they're excited that they have dialogue, and they want to get the students together at that grade, so they can start meeting each other and do that, so. And two other things. Fire department, the 3 local fire departments are holding an event for Andy and the ex-fire chief and his wife who was involved in that serious accident. And it's gonna be on Sunday morning, November 3rd, from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. And it'll be at the firehouse. So, and it's available online. You can buy tickets online. You can donate online. But this family is definitely is in need to have their house refurbished so that it's ADA compliant, the bathrooms and everything else. So it's really important. And come out to the event on Halloween. The fire department's having a big bash with fireworks and food for the whole community. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Let's see, I guess, Dwight, you're next regarding the Pledge of Allegiance.
I had contacted Beth some time ago, recently, just to ask why we don't have it on our agenda to start the meeting with. She asked me, well, what other commissions? I'm saying, doesn't really matter what other commissions. I'm just surprised that nobody's even brought it up. So I just like to, is there a reason why we don't do it? Is there a reason why we shouldn't do it?
It's never come up.
So I'm
many
just
years,
bringing it
yeah?
up because a lot of meetings I go to, we always start, we do the opening day with the pledge. We do everything, there are a lot of other meetings in town. So I just wanted to bring it up and say, is it something that maybe we could consider and we could do as the start of every meeting? Just
Anyone
wanted
else
to
wanna
bring it up,
speak
that's
to
all.
this?
Just never been done. I think that's the only reason that I know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask the question.
I
I've
don't
never
think it's
seen it.
a-
I haven't seen it.
Certainly.
We have a flag, so right there.
Right, we could sit, right.
I certainly don't have any issue with it.
No?
So I'm gonna make the motion.
Okay,
That we-
first we have to amend the agenda so you can make a motion.
Okay,
So
okay.
you have to call for a vote
Okay,
to make a
okay, so
motion.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to allow a vote for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Then
now
I'd
we
like
have
to
to
make a
make a
motion,
motion.
now I
Yep.
can, like to make a motion that we start each meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance.
Second.
Any discussion? No?
I mean, I personally don't see the need for this, but if the majority wants to go that way,
It's a
I'm
patriotic
kinda
thing. to let it-
neutral, but.
yeah, I'm not
whatever.
feeling real patriotic, that's my problem. That's being very frank.
Okay, all right, so, you made the motion, that Joe
Yep.
seconded it, right?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, that's fair. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll vote for
Okay,
it.
good.
Okay, so we'll add that,
We're gonna amend it. That you and I see.
Okay.
Thank you.
yep. Next item on the agenda is update budget task force, Sandy Stein.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
actually, Meek and I are gonna do this together.
Okay,
Just to remind everyone, Beth actually charged a budget review task force back in July. And Meek and I are the representatives from the Board of Selectmen, and Matt Giglietti and Paul Kiriakos from the Board of Finance. And Tony is also with us on that task force. So the first meeting was in July 18th. And the week starting August 8th, we've met weekly ever since then until last Tuesday. We have met with the following department heads. And again, we selected these groups based on the size of their budget and opportunities to maybe look at how services are provided differently. The Woodbridge Board of Education, Police, Fire, Library, Recreation, Human Services, Public Works, Town Clerk, and Animal Control. We did actually upfront identify guidelines of how we wanted to generate ideas. We're not looking to nickel and dime budgets. And we did create a process for how we would go about generating the ideas and then sharing them. So I'm actually gonna let Mika talk about what those guidelines were and what is the process that we created.
As Sandy said, the intent was for us to identify more game changers as opposed to just the individual small items that would or innovative type thoughts or really process type different changes that could impact on the budget, that could have a somewhat significant impact. We started out by identifying approximately, if we were to try to maintain or to try to retain in the existing tax amount or requirement as far as the mill rate is concerned, what would we have to save, considering that there are a significant number of, there's a significant amount that has to be increased every year just for salaries and things of that nature. So we started there in understanding that number and then worked to see what we can do, what will we need to do to get there. So what we, so going forward, we've now met with everyone at this point in time in terms of the actual department heads. The next step in the process would be to meet with the heads of the commissions and talk to them a little bit about what the discussions we have, particularly as we're entering into the budget cycle, the budget period, if you will. Once we, and what we've asked them to consider is ideas that go across the department. What we've noticed that most of the departments do is they work in silos. They identify what their budgets are, particularly what their budgets require, but not necessarily in conjunction with where there might be overlap or what additional could be done if we look at more universal or if we take into consideration other departments that might be doing similar things to them. So with that, we're looking for the boards, we're looking to attend the boards and commission meetings specifically to discuss the ideas. The first thing we would do is actually meet with the board chairs, and the second meeting would be with the entire board for there to be a full discussion in terms of what we've discussed, what ideas have been put out there, and coming into the budget cycle, what can be done to either implement those ideas or utilize those ideas in a manner as to control the overall budget. And the ideas are categorized into short, mid, and long term. Obviously, short terms are the ones you can look at very quickly and have an immediate impact, and so on and so forth. So, so in addition to that, it's going to be important that we continue the discussion, that we not make this a one-time event where, okay, we gave you the information, if nothing happens, well, we tried, but rather that there is a continual conversation, particularly as it relates to the long-term goals, because there are some things that we looked at that will entail more than simply looking at it and saying, okay, let's cut here or do that. So that's the next step. I don't know if you have more to add, Cindy.
Right. Well, we produced a chart, and this will become the public record of all the different ideas that we came up with as a task force, but also that departments came up with as well, that we discussed. And as Mika said, they're categorized now as short-term, mid-term, and long-term. And I think it's important to actually, for people to review what is here. And we are starting now to speak with the heads of each of the commissions responsible for these areas. Tony is dealing with the departments such as Public Works, Animal Control, and Town Clerk. But the rest of us are dividing up, meeting with the commission chairs. And then we will actually formally present at a commission meeting what are the ideas related to that department and commission. So they can start to really think about this. This is a collaboration. This is not saying you have to do this by this time. It's helping them start to think differently about how services are provided, where there are inefficiencies, how can we consolidate certain functions, are there underutilized services? And again, when you're just thinking in your own silo, which I don't, think is wrong, that's kind of what everybody has done, this is trying to elevate the conversation from that perspective.
And the one thing I'll add is just that we're hopeful this is representative. We were trying to obviously acknowledge the discussions we've had in the past, and we're hopeful this is representative of what consistent with what this board in particular was hoping would come out of something like this. But very, very much welcome your input and your feedback as relates to that and also the content itself.
Right. There are two areas that we didn't go into a lot of detail with the department heads. that is regionalization. And it's regionalization not just for the Woodbridge Board of Education, but for other town services, to really look at that. And again, those are longer-term discussions, but we will want to bring this up when we speak to the commissions. And the other thing is a review of the vehicle use policy, the number of vehicles that we have, and maybe potentially dealing with those differently as we go forward. It's understood this has to go to the Personnel Committee, but this is something that we definitely want to look at. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about what's presented in this chart.
I'd like to first thank you, Sandy, Mika, Paul, and Matt. I know they're not here. You were one of the busiest bunch of beavers I ever saw every week, almost in town hall, with Tony as well. I want to thank you as well.
Yes, Tony was
for
key.
sitting in and really doing your due diligence to interview everyone that asked to be seen, as well as suggesting others. And I just want to thank you very much, and please extend my thanks to Matt. I will probably say something at the Board of Finance on
Right,
Thursday
right.
night to thank them, but
Right.
it's an extremely comprehensive task force review, and I had my concerns in the beginning, and you did a great job. So
Okay,
it's
thank
you.
not
Sandy was
that I
a great
see
leader.
it, there's a whole bunch of stuff the first selectman has to do, so I'm just riveted with excitement about that. Thank you, but it's a good start, and certainly something that will provide us going forward a way to,
Just to
get a
think-
handle on.
think- and think
Absolutely.
differently
Nothing is
about-
etched in stone, but
Right.
it's a roadmap for,
Right.
looking at our budget critically. And I'm glad you're gonna meet with all the department heads ahead of time prior to their, developing their budgets, so they'll have a better idea as
Right,
to
and
what
we
we're
want the
thinking.
commissions to kind of
Yeah.
own this as well, and see that there are other ways. Yeah.
Are you now approaching all the commission
Yep, we actually
chairs
have.
and everything else, you're now
We
doing
have a
that?
schedule,
Right, yeah.
and that again, we're each, at the next commission meeting.
At their next
Okay,
commission.
At their next commission
Right.
meeting, we will have already met with or spoken to the commission chair, so that they are aware of what we wanna talk about, but that by, what is it, the latest date here? November 12th, that's the latest date. All the commissions will have been presented with the ideas that are on this chart,
Okay.
okay?
And if
Where's
we-
that gonna be? Is that be on the website?
So we need to actually approve the minutes of our last meeting, and we're gonna try to do this on Thursday, so that everything can get posted.
Okay. I'd just like to,
Sure, yeah,
that'd
And
be great.
we're thinking the same way in terms of not only the liaison being there to do that, but rather seeing if other members can also attend to understand.
yeah,
I'd be interested in maybe a
That would
few
be
of
great.
the commissions to
Okay.
listen.
sure, okay. I'll make sure that you get this.
That'd be great, thank
I
you.
do wanna mention one other thing, because we did talk about the capital budget, and we did talk about debt service. Tony is actually going to deal separately with debt service. We talked about a number of different ideas, but you do have a sheet in your packet about the capital budget. And we just wanted to create a sense of reality as to what do we have available to us as dollars. And it's not as if we're gonna set a policy, but we talked about a guideline of the capital budget being 2.25% of our operating budget as a guideline going forward. So if we applied that to our budget for this current year, 1920, we would have approximately $1.132 million for capital budget. Okay, our operating budget this year is $50,300,000. Now, you have to look at what are our committed expenditures that we have to fund that are already in there. Well, there's a lease payment for a fire truck, there's an air pack lease, a sweeper lease, and we want to make sure that we do have a minimum of $500,000 for road paving. So that total together is almost $800,000. And we're only talking about $1.1 million. So we felt that there also probably needed to be a placeholder for Public Works and Police in terms of equipment that they need, supplies that come up, the vehicle, and it's $40,000 for each of those two departments. So that brings us to almost $872,000 of pre-commitments of dollars. So if you subtract that from the 1.1 million, you're left with about $260,000. That's all we really have on a yearly basis. And this isn't going to change unless something changes in terms of other dollars that we find to put into the capital budget. And it really points to the need that if we have larger projects, we actually have to go out and get a bond for that. We have to take out a loan. And so this relates specifically to Beecher. A number of us went on the tour of the facilities, and the magnitude of the work that they would like to do is going to necessitate borrowing money. So, I made it very clear that they need to think differently, not just to expect to, bundle things or, have them extend it over a 5-year period of time, but that we need to think about it as a bigger project, and that we are not likely to have money that from retired debt service for probably 3 years. So again, this is just creating a reality for people so they don't keep asking for things that we're not going to be able to fund. So again, this is not a policy. This is just a way of looking at what are the resources that we really have available. And, the definition of a capital project is that it's an item that is a minimum of $5,000 and that it has to have a useful life of usually 5 or more years, and it should not be a maintenance item. But I think it's important for the departments and the commissions to understand we're talking about $260,000. That's it. So again, some of these leases, once they're finished being paid, we can substitute other things for that. But that this is not robust. Let's put it that way.
Do we know when these are gonna be taken care of, Tony? I'm just curious, that's all.
It's on the
'cause
debt
We have a
service.
schedule.
There's a
Okay.
schedule
Yeah.
for that.
It's another year, I think, for the fire truck, 2 there for that, another year for the sweeper.
Okay.
Within the next few years, they're all.
A lot of them will be gone.
Right, so
Okay.
we can replace
No,
those.
right, I was just curious to see how long.
Right, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thanks very much again, you guys. Sure. Okay, lost my agenda, oh Lord. Okay, Tony, you're up. It's in this pile. Wait a minute.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. Administrative Officer, Director of Finance report. Number 1, the monthly report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the monthly report is through the first quarter of the fiscal year, and it has a surplus of just under $70,000. And there are just a few items that have come to my attention, which I wanted to report to you. And so the first is that the town has generated about $25,000 from the sale of assets from the former country club. So that was the revenue that we did not budget for, and so therefore is surplus funds for the fiscal year. Secondly, the Board of Selectmen budget has a surplus of about $53,000. Their vacant position, as you know, of the communications director and grants writer position, and at this time it is anticipated that this will not be funded and eliminated. So that would generate then a surplus in that department. And finally, the Country Club of Woodbridge is projected to have a deficit of about $10,000 because the budget, had planned to close by June 30th, and we're not able to do that. So we did not eliminate all the utilities till probably September, sometime in September. So there are some utility costs that we would have to pay for, namely mostly electricity, some minor other water and sewer costs are relatively minor. But we would have to pay for those, and then the utilities have since been shut off, so there are no more utilities to the building. Everything is locked up. The fire marshal gave his, told that we did everything appropriately, and so that's all set. So those are the 3 major items. These are fund balances at about 12% of our operating budget.
Tony, the $24,264, does that go into the fund balance or to the contingency?
Fund balance. If you don't reappropriate it for some other purpose, it would just go into fund balance.
To that end, what would be involved, Beth, with appropriating that for the country club to do some work and, you know, that might be appropriate during this coming season?
Well, that's up to the,
Yeah, there's no use restriction,
Sure,
there's
yeah.
just restrictions by charter
Yeah.
in terms of how much
Okay.
and
I
what it's
don't know the
for.
process
Yeah.
for us to make that happen, maybe in
Right,
next
in
next
terms
meeting.
of, you know, more mowing, so that, you know, it actually looks decent over the winter time.
and,
do any of those things.
by the way, I believe we did mow the lawn and
Yes,
take down
and you did take down
37
trees.
trees,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Did I
We
do
did
that?
a lot of trees, I'm not
The
sure if it's
trees.
36
I don't know, I
or 37.
remember the number for something like that, so we did indeed do that, in spite of the fact that, I mean, it doesn't look like we did, but we did, it's a big piece of property. It was $11,000 or something that we appropriated to
Yep.
do that.
The other thing is to use this,
Right.
to create a master plan.
You could.
For a town park.
Absolutely,
You could do it
And
using
Maybe
I
funds.
think
go
that
to RFP or something
lends some
along those
Yep.
lines.
seriousness to that.
absolutely.
So,
Yep.
you know, I just, okay, so, what's necessary to get it done, I guess, is, what's the
Well,
process?
we have to put together a proposal,
Okay.
and then bring the proposal in front of the board for their review,
Yep,
if that's something.
Do
you
we
want
have
us
to do anything to earmark these dollars
No.
ahead of
It'll
time,
be
or we
part
can
of the
just leave it be
proposal,
and
where
we
it's
can just
coming
leave it
from.
be
They'll
and then
stay,
just-
they'll stay there till June 30th of next year. You'd have to act before then.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
And-
well, maybe we talk further.
right,
Yeah.
right, okay, it's not a bad idea though, personally, but
Thank you.
I'm only one vote, okay,
Okay,
thank you.
okay.
Okay, tax refunds. Let's see.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
You have in your packet a memo from our Pecrisco, our tax collector. There are no personal property refunds, there are no real estate refunds, I feel totally fine, but my voice is a mess. What is going on here? Yeah, I've been drinking water. I don't want people to think I'm sick, it's just, I don't know what's happening here. There are motor vehicle refunds of $6,844.60, so I'll make a motion that we approve those refunds. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Number C, funding requests.
There's one.
Funding, yeah.
It's actually a line item transfer, not a funding request.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep, okay. First one, you have in your packet, by the way, a copy of the approved contingency, just for your reference, if you need that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate getting that.
Tony
every
does
month.
that, it's very
Yes.
great, thank you.
Yeah, sure,
Good
no
job.
problem,
Thank
yeah.
you.
It helps us see where we are and where we're going with that before the SNOW comes. Okay. The first one is a line item transfer number 1920-04 in the amount of $6,407. I'll make a motion, we approve it. Is there a second?
Second.
And now we can begin the discussion. Perhaps, Tony, you'd like to,
Certainly, so we had, this is for the installation of wiring for Town Hall and the library to install panic buttons and door contacts for our security project. We had funded the rest of the project, but we had anticipated that the town would perform this wiring, but it doesn't look like that's something that, due to other commitments that our maintenance department can do in a timely manner, although they are very capable of doing it, but they have other obligations that have come up. So, in order to get this project moving along, we are suggesting to have the vendor perform the work, which was an option in their bid when they sent in their bids.
so this
Basically
is
it.
just for that part?
Just for the wiring of the two buildings.
Okay. So, does anybody have any questions of Tony? Okay, I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
And that's actually coming out of,
It's a project that's, yeah,
yeah, project that's completed.
right.
Okay, next we have a memorandum from Tony. Would like to request authorization to use State of Connecticut Contract 14PSX0073, pricing for the purchase of 30 mobile radios for public works vehicles. This is, I think, part of the town radio
Correct.
system
So it's
project.
coming out of that
already
funding?
It's coming out of the bond fund.
This is so everybody's on the same frequency.
Correct.
Everybody can
Yes.
talk to each other.
That's correct.
Which
That's
is
correct.
something we
I mean,
needed for
it's
100
a-
years.
And
Yep,
this is a bid item, not a funding item,
right.
because we're using state contract to purchase the radios,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
So,
I'll make a motion that we use the state
Thank you,
contract
Mika.
for mobile radios for the Department of Public Works.
Second? Whatever.
okay, any further discussion on this?
I just want to,
Sure.
just to point out that the radio committee has recommended this for this purchase.
And it's $73,100.
Correct. Yep.
Sorry,
Okay.
$12.09. Thank you.
Joe is a member.
Of which Joe is a member,
Yeah.
right?
So, okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you, everybody. They were cooking with gas now. Okay, old firehouse change order.
So, we were hopeful to have a change order for your present this evening. As you all know, this project is, we have a timetable on this project that we have to meet. And, we are very close to having a completed change order, mainly due to the fact that, we felt due to some leaking in one of the roofs over the third bay, bay three, is it?
Bay three.
Bay three, yeah. It's leaking significantly.
Mm-hmm.
It has gotten worse in the, just over the past, I think, few months, it's gotten worse,
Yeah,
I think.
it's gotten pretty bad.
Yeah, so, we rearranged some of the items on the, bid and removed some of the items that were not as essential, and, wanna add roofing for that bay. So, we just have to button up a few, details, and so we didn't have a change order for your, review, but we may need to have, something, a meeting pretty quickly, even if
Once
it's
we
just-
get it all
once we get it all
once we
buttoned up. Yeah.
dot all the i's.
But I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
So you're saying we
Okay.
need to have a meeting of the Board of Selectmen? pretty
Correct, to
quickly
vote to approve the
To
change.
approve it,
Yeah.
okay. Yep, okay. We have a Steve grant that we have to spend pretty soon.
Correct,
Okay,
right,
okay,
that's
thank you.
correct. So as soon as we have that ready, we'll let you know.
All right, wonderful.
Can
Do
you
you
put
have
a
any-
tarp over it until we get there? No, I'm serious.
No,
No?
it's bad.
That's,
So
You
she's
get-
asking if we
we
could put a
had-
tarp?
Can we put a tarp over it until we can,
I mean, what
Do
we're thinking
something
about
more.
doing, Tony, we can address this, but we're thinking, once we get this change order approved, we can proceed, the roof will be proceeding within a month.
right.
right, but
So it's
we
gonna
can
be
have
pretty,
some
it's
heavy
not, I mean,
rainfalls.
it's not like,
Apparently
it's
tomorrow.
It's
not,
not raining inside the building.
it's not really raining, there are puddles, there are
Okay.
5 or 6 puddles that every time it rains, like tomorrow, it's gonna rain.
Yeah.
Right.
We're anticipating some leakage.
So while we had the
From that roof.
opportunity, we didn't wanna wait another 6 to 8 months or whatever.
Okay.
Oh, no, I understand.
The roof is not in danger of collapsing?
Correct.
No,
Okay.
no.
There's just a.
Got
No,
it.
it's fine,
Puddles,
it's just,
okay.
it's an
I
older
think
roof,
that was
that's
more
all.
to your point, Sandy,
We
we
have to
didn't wanna
address
have
it.
a
Yeah.
collapse or
Okay,
something
yeah.
really horrible.
Okay.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
All right, do you have an other?
No,
Any
I
other
do
other?
not, no.
Okay, thank you, I love saying that. Betsy,
You all,
Assistant Administrative Officer for LED, I'm sorry, LED, I should just stop talking. Okay, go ahead.
You all received in your packet a memo about this proposal to convert multiple municipal buildings to LEDs. And we're asking to go forward with one of two options. Scenario A is where the vendor does all of the conversions in all of the buildings. And scenario B is where they do the conversion in Beecher Road School and any other area that would require a lift. So like the center building gym, the parking lot lights, those types of things.
So is there capacity for town staff to do this?
There is, but as Tony just mentioned, we had previously planned for them to do another project that they were able to do, but schedule-wise, it would take a long time.
And the flips, the other alternative, the other item on this that's worth considering is the sooner we replace the lighting, the more we start saving money on our electricity. So if we have to wait, 6 months or whatever it is to replace the lighting, it might
would
not be
eat into
worth
savings.
the saving of
Right, but it is 25,000.
25,000, yeah.
There's no, from a warranty maintenance standpoint, is there any consideration to that?
So that's a good question. So we will get a 5-year warranty on the product, and if the vendor does the labor, there's also a 5-year warranty on the labor.
But we're changing light bulbs, right?
Well, they're.
Or are you changing?
It is a little more complicated than that because they'll have to
Okay.
be, they're
You're not
doing a
changing
conversion.
light.
It's not like for like.
Okay, so they're doing the fixtures and the light bulbs.
In some cases, so sometimes they'll have to change a ballast, or there may be other, we have a
Some
lot of different
electrical work
types of lighting.
required.
It's an electrical,
Yeah.
Right.
it's an electrical thing.
It is more complicated than switching out your own
Light bulb.
light bulb, yes.
I didn't mean to make it seem
I
like,
know.
but, I mean, it does cost $200,000, so it has to be more than that.
And just the other item, and Betsy's done a lot of work on this, and I just want to mention that it's through on-bill financing through the utility, which means that the utility finances the project at 0% over 3 years. And the idea is that the savings in your electricity is equal to or more than the cost of the loan. So after 3 years,
Oh, I see.
you then
It'll
have
pay for
everything
itself.
replaced, so it
Okay.
pays for itself.
Right, so we're not cutting a check for $200,000, we're just gonna be paying our electric bill going forward
Like
as
we always do.
usual.
Like we
And
always do.
Ideally,
Yeah, right. That's
we
just-
will not
that's-
be paying any more on our electric bill, but there's no way to know for sure until we decide the vendor and the scope of the project, and then UI has to run the numbers. They do a very complicated, analysis that includes things like how many hours a day and how many days a week is the building open? What kind of light bulbs do you have currently? What will you be converting to? And so the maximum that we would be spending is this $200,000, but it would be less, and it would also,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And so it would, the amount of the project is gonna determine whether or not we're gonna be paying slightly more than our current bill, or right on par, or just slightly under that.
Right. And there'll be an analysis presented by the utility.
Is there a timeline that the provider has that they would meet for this? In other words, if we don't know what our schedule necessarily will be. So are they saying they can complete it within a particular amount of time?
I think scenario B they could do within about 8 weeks, but then it would take our staff many more weeks to
And-
finish the project.
And if scenario A would also be 8 weeks?
The big question there is the school. And so, it
You
would
have to
be.
get access to that.
Correct,
That's gonna
access
be
to the
key.
school.
Exactly, and that's a significantly larger project than any of the other
Right.
buildings that we have.
But they're gonna do that in either A or B, they're doing the
Yes.
school.
Right.
Yes. And so their assumption is that they'll be able to do it after hours once school is out, but the building is still occupied.
Okay.
So, how is it decided, whether or not we can do a project or not internally? I'm just, would like to know what that process is. No, the skill set we can do. but
Yeah,
it's-
skill set we can do, so.
Right, we know that.
One of the factors which we're gonna look into, but we wanna get more specifics on, is exactly how much we're gonna save with the additional time versus how much we're gonna pay for the project.
Sure.
That's a big factor.
Okay.
And also, you'll see the town labor hours is 308
Yeah,
labor
yeah,
hours.
that's a lot.
And that's how many hours a day, do we figure?
That's figuring about 20 hours a week. So assuming they're getting called away to do other things, but there could be a bigger project that,
Well, so,
How's that?
I mean, the reason I'm asking this is the second project just tonight, where we're not using our own, staff to do the work. So I'm just asking, how are those decisions made? I mean, we don't actually see their schedule, we're not looking at their productivity,
Right.
but somebody needs to do
We
this.
do, we look at what their other items they have on their agenda, what time of year it is, and typically, what they have to do during that time period, what time off they get, and all that's factored into our decision. We haven't made a final decision yet until we see the figures from the utility. But these are, you can see how close the numbers are.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
that's how we sort of would make that decision. If it was half the cost, well, that would be different, other
Yeah,
than.
my recommendation would be to have them furnish and install it. It's 100% guaranteed labor. If one of our guys screws up some things,
Right.
and
Right.
whatever it is, I'm looking at more of the, the guarantee is, if anything, and it is a low bid, it's pretty low as compared to some
it
of
is.
the other ones.
And this is
Right.
the vendor
And
that
I'm
we
looking
used
at
at the
more of
library.
the town,
That's true.
the town's interest, and let our guys do other things that they really need to do. And,
Right, but I'm asking another level question, since there are two projects tonight
Right.
that are being funded, through other sources because our staff doesn't have the time to do the project. And I'm just asking, how is it determined? What are the priorities of the projects? And I'm not objecting to spending the 200,000. I understand the, the relationship that's
Right.
there. And I agree with you, Dwight, let's just get it done.
We got, right, without having to
But-
wait week after week.
So,
Because we have a lot of staff and,
Not that
Not for
much.
this.
Not that much.
It's a lot of
Okay.
We
hours
just
when
have-
you
yeah,
look
we
at
just
the
have
hours,
two
it's a lot of
people.
hours. That's
Yeah.
an
In
estimate.
terms of building
That's an
maintenance, you
estimate
mean?
too, the
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like Public Works as a
No.
whole.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's
no,
only in
this is
building
just building
maintenance.
maintenance, they're the only ones that
Okay.
have the skill
There
sets
are
to
two
do
people
that.
to do this whole thing.
Okay, and the other project,
Right.
Correct.
because that would be them also in
Right,
terms of the
and to
electric.
coordinate a bunch of other
Okay.
different projects to help us out, the old firehouse.
Right.
They,
Okay.
they help maintain all the
Yeah.
other buildings in
Cool
town.
stuff that happens all day long.
As long as someone is
Right.
looking at this,
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
I just don't want it to be kind of ad hoc, that, we don't think we can do this, we have
Right.
enough other projects,
Right.
so, okay.
So Betsy, based on your analysis, do you have any particular recommendation from your perspective?
I personally think it would be better to have the vendor do everything, get it done quickly, have the warranty
And
in
it's all,
place.
right, it's
I
all
think we're on
under
the same
one,
page.
all under one.
Right, and this is a
One plan.
vendor that we've used in the past, they're the ones who did the LED conversion of the library.
Oh, good.
And so,
Familiar with, yeah.
So we
Brad,
have
our
some-
maintenance.
Yeah, we're
runs-
familiar with their work in there.
Yeah.
So we have a,
We know the product, we know
we
the
have experience
vendor.
with it. Good. All right.
Any,
That's fine.
any clear, it's just more curiosity question than anything, I'm sorry to take the time even, but is there, the EEL is almost half of Titan, just,
So the two lower bidders are, both using product made in China.
okay.
And the first vendor, Titan, is using all American-made products, so that's one of the major price differences. And the difference for the other two, Wattsaver and EEL, some of it was product, but when we added in labor, there was more of a discrepancy
Right.
there.
Even more. Okay. Are we taking action on this?
That's what I was gonna ask.
I think so, right?
Well, yeah, so if you want to approve us to move forward with this project, then we'll get the analysis done from the utility. There's just a lot of work from the utility, and they just want to make sure that you approve of the project before they, go
So
forward and do
more
all
of a
the work.
consensus thing rather than a vote?
Well, I would
Would you
vote.
like us to vote?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna have to amend the agenda again. I'll make a motion that we add to the agenda, approval of the LED installation.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on that? We'll add, this is just
Good with
adding
that.
it to the
This is
agenda?
adding it to the agenda.
Yep, okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And, now we'll make a motion to,
I'll make a motion that
Okay,
we
thanks.
approve,
Energy efficient.
we approve this project going forward with the understanding that it will, be part of the invoicing, as Betsy had indicated, provided via a 3-year 0% loan from the,
From the utility.
from the utility.
Right.
And that we, have the entire project completed by the provider, or the vendor,
The energy
Energy
efficient
efficient
lighting.
lighting.
energy efficient lighting. Thank you.
should we put the amount in there as well?
At a cost,
200,000.
That's a not to exceed
200,000.
cost.
Not to exceed two
cost
hundred
not to
thousand,
exceed
$21.00
$200,000.
and 0 cents.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great, I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, motion seconded, yes?
You
All
did.
in favor?
You did.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy.
Yeah, good job.
No,
Any
good.
other?
Yes, just wanted to give you a very quick update on trails. I think I've mentioned to you in the past, I've been working with the Conservation Commission Chair, the Woodbridge Land Trust, and the Woodbridge Parks Association to work on a plan to have one maintenance plan for all of our trails. And we now have a new volunteer trail master, Andy Danzig. And he and I are working together to coordinate volunteers that will be working primarily on town trails. And we're working with the other groups to help them beef up their volunteer basis as well. So we're hoping to really be more active about trail maintenance. And as Beth mentioned, to celebrate our trails, there's a Trails Day this Saturday at 9 a.m. There's 2 hikes, both leaving at 9 a.m. One's an easy 2-mile hike, and one is a more rigorous 5-mile hike. And they both come back to Town Center where the Arts and Music Festival will be going on. So it should be a really nice day. That's all part of Fallapalooza, and there's a few more Fallapalooza events going on. Pampered in Pink is the annual breast cancer fundraiser hosted by Progression Salon. That's on October 26th. The same day, Tennis Central is having an open house, and of course, Truck or Treat is on Halloween. Excuse me. And just want to give you a quick economic development update. There's a new business in town. Rise and Grind Nutrition is a smoothie shop at 1652 Litchfield Turnpike. That's the same plaza where Katz's is. Also, I've been hosting business sector meetings. In August, I hosted a meeting for daycare directors, and they've agreed they'd like to meet twice a year to network and share information with each other. Tomorrow, I'm hosting the third monthly meeting of the retail and service sector businesses, and they've been talking about coordinating promotions or specials, specifically in February when it's a slow month for retail businesses. Last week, I organized a wellness sector meeting, and they were so enthusiastic, they also want to meet monthly. So there's been a lot of really great energy around these meetings. People seem to want to meet others in their field, and they've been talking about doing some coordination of events or promotions. That's it.
Kudos to the work you're doing with the EDC.
Great.
That's
Thanks.
good.
Thank you very much.
When did you say the trail event was on? Was it meeting here? Where is it
That's
starting?
this Saturday. They're both meeting just out here at Town Center at 9 a.m.
Okay, moving right along. Town Council's report. Item A is the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society Good to Great grant, and action is appropriate.
So this is the Good to Great grant that we've heard about. It's in the approximate amount of $64,000 that the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society that has been awarded to them, and it is appropriate for someone to make a motion to approve that grant.
I will do that.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion on this at all? I will note that I think I read this kind of quickly, but there's something about a mist fire suppression system included in this project. Is that correct?
Yes, mist fire suppression, M-I-S-T.
Yep. Interesting. Okay, I find that interesting. Okay, great. Any discussion?
No, it's okay.
It's all right. Thank you. Any discussion? No?
Just great that they
Sure.
were able to secure it. I know that it wasn't
Right.
some
Yep, it's good
concern,
stuff.
so.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor?
Hi,
Good? Okay.
thank you.
Thanks for hanging in the whole 3 hours. Okay, the next item, you have anything else on that, Jerry? Nothing, right?
Nothing on that.
Okay, all righty. Item B, also thank you for hanging in, is the dog park memorandum of understanding, and action is appropriate.
So the Woodbridge Dog Park Cooperative has advised us that they are just about ready, and they have most of their funding, if not all their funding. They're just about ready to get to the next level, and they asked for an amendment to the memorandum of understanding, which was executed by the town right at the beginning of their endeavor. And I prepared a memorandum that you all should have, an amendment to the original memorandum you should all have before you. After Bonnie Blake and the Dog Park Cooperative reviewed it, they had a couple of suggestions, and they were excellent suggestions. And by the way, I'm going to recommend that we accept it, and I'll just go over, there are only two. Paragraph 5 in what you have before you is going to be modified to the following. So long as the WDPC is not in default under the terms of this agreement, the town shall not remove, relocate, destroy, or confiscate any improvements, fixtures, materials, or structures contained in the dog park facility, which makes common sense, and I have no problem with that. And further, any and all improvements, fixtures, materials, or structures contained in the dog park facility shall be the property of the WDPC should either party elect to terminate this agreement pursuant to its terms. And again, I have no problem with that modification. That sounds pretty logical. They're gonna put some benches in there, a fence, I think.
So question regarding that, do they need to come to the Board of Selectmen or another office within Town Hall to get approval for what they select?
Yes, they're actually going to inland wetlands right now to make sure that they have the property zoning authority to have that approved, whatever they do there. They're gonna be removing the asphalt.
But just like, we approved the benches that went, on the town green.
It's an interesting question.
Same thing, okay.
Same thing. We were told that we had to use the 2 more benches, even though they cost $1,000 more each.
Right. You already got an 824 review.
Yes,
way
yes,
back
they did.
when.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't on
It's
the board
okay.
then, so I don't know all these
I'm just
details.
thinking back to a
Okay.
couple of years ago.
Okay.
They got an 824 review from Plan and Zoning, it was, okay.
And number 8, that's before you, is going to be changed as follows. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this agreement, either party shall have the option to terminate this agreement without cause upon 6 months prior written notice to the other party. Originally, I had in there that the town would have the option to terminate without cause. I don't ever anticipate, but you never know that at the time, that this Board of Selectmen anyway would ever do that, but it is a decent, a protection for the town going down the road. And the cooperative said that they would like to have the same opportunity to terminate without cause if they felt it necessary and it wasn't working out. So it's just been modified to have a mutual right to terminate without cause. And other than that, the document is the same as we had prepared it originally.
Considering there would be other items in the park, should there be anything that indicates that whatever is there would be, by whoever terminates it, would be, or, needs to be,
Restored?
or, well, not restored, no, just take it. So if there's benches and you wanna mow it or you do something else, that they would, if the dog park decided they didn't wanna do this anymore, they give us 6 months notice, and they also, whatever they have, they take. I would assume they would
Right.
want to, but, that they would take it.
Right.
So that
Take the
it's
benches.
not left there for,
Our primary concern with the items there is because we're a 501c3 and we're stipulating that 100% of donation goes directly to the instruction of the dog park. We have no administrative costs. So we were concerned about, should something happen, who, and so
Okay.
we're supposed to be using it for a like-kind community project. There are nuances to that legality. Those benches weigh a bloody ton. So I can't imagine they're gonna go so far, and we're not gonna be moving trees.
understood. Don't know what else.
We
to
would
add
very
there,
much
but-
like to be there for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the benches could be moved along the side so people could enjoy them if they're out in the middle of the field. I don't know how else,
I don't think it's an issue.
I know.
And I just have one more question, and this may or may not be related to the memorandum. But are there rules for using the dog
Yes.
park?
Yes.
And will those rules be posted?
Yes.
Yes, I'm
And-
working on the signage for that now.
And we got the guidelines for the town sign, and we're hopefully gonna use Signorama, and the rules, we will in fact send, Betsy, and I don't know, I mean, we gave the rules about a year ago.
Yeah.
When we.
Sandy asked me for them and I haven't gotten it
No,
yet.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I thought as long as they're here.
We
they-
will
Yep,
send
yeah, there you
an
go.
updated
Okay.
one.
Yeah, they're better written now.
Is that something, I don't wanna we have too much time taken already. Is that something that the board wants to re-vote on?
No, I'm not
Why would we?
necessarily asking
No,
for
we already
that
did
at
it.
all. It's
No.
just more of an operational question. And then, what is the process if someone doesn't comply with those rules?
We break both your legs, no.
But the dog's okay.
Yeah, as long as the dog's okay.
Well, all of us will, of course, when we're present, if we see an infraction of the rule, I have no problem going over and saying, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Rule number 3 says, blah, 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 you'll have to but we do not foresee, people breaking the rules because we know a lot of these people already and we're there every day with them and we're already teaching them dog etiquette. And, we will have people coming in and lecturing and giving talks about proper way to be in a dog park.
Okay.
Yeah.
They can be asked to leave.
That's great.
They will be asked.
I mean, in other words, I've gone to the Hampton Dog Park for something as simple as forgetting my dog treats in the upper pocket of my parka, and the dogs got really friendly with me fast. And the dogs are all jumping on me, and someone said, "You have dog treats?" And I went, "Oh, I forgot. Out, no dog treats. You can take them out, but then return." So, a well-run dog park, there are usually someone from that's why I called it a cooperative, there that can say. And clearly, if it was something where it was dangerous, we could call police immediately.
Or animal control.
Right.
We spent a lot of time researching
Okay.
and studying the laws and the rules in all the Connecticut dog parks that we could possibly get to.
Okay. All right.
And we've done our homework and and our board voted and we really think we've got a great set of rules.
All right, thank you.
We will send.
Well, yeah, if you could send them, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah,
That way
absolutely.
people ask, we can
Oh, yeah.
communicate as well.
They will be up at the same time as the fence.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the amendment.
Second.
It's called the First Amendment to Memorandum of Understanding, correct?
As
With the
modified by-
two modifications that Jerry Weiner iterated in his discussion. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any other discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done. Thank you for hanging in. Thanks for hanging in.
Give me a hard copy. Oh, I can print it out.
I have it. I did the hard
No,
copy.
not the change.
Not the changes?
Not, you don't have the changes.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do?
I printed it out
Oh, okay, good.
from her email.
Well, I'll print mine out.
All right, okay.
Can't remember.
Never mind. We got it. Okay, item C is the 824 review to Town Plan and Zoning Commission regarding the Amity Regional High School facilities projects.
As I understand that the Amity has asked all three towns to approve a referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission under 8-24 for their proposed improvements that we heard the presentation on tonight, assuming that it passes. Obviously, in the referendum, obviously, if it doesn't pass, it's not necessary, but they asked that, apparently Bethany has already done it, and Orange has already done it, or they're about to do it, so they asked that we just make the referral.
I'll
And
make a
then-
motion that we approve the referral to Town Plan and Zoning, an
Yeah.
824 review to
Eight,
our,
Right.
to the, okay. Second?
Second.
Okay.
Sh-
Any
want me to say it
discussion
again?
on this?
Joe seconded that.
Oh,
Just for discussion purposes, can
Yeah.
you just say that one more? When you say the referral, what are we referring to?
to the planning, section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes
Yes.
requires a referral to the Planning and Zoning
Oh,
Commission.
for us to refer, got it.
Yes,
I
so
didn't
you guys
understand.
refer.
Thank you very much.
First and seconded. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay. Item 15 on the agenda is canceling the December 3rd and December 5th regular meeting. We don't have to vote to do that, it's just done, correct, Jerry?
These are joint meetings.
Informational purposes. These are joint meetings between the Boards of Selectmen and Finance. I think it's the capital budget, right?
Correct.
Yep. Which brings us to segue into item 16, which is a vote to approve the December 10th, 2019 and December 12th, 19 Boards of Finance Selectmen joint review meetings for capital budget reviews. I'll make a motion that we vote to
Second.
approve them. Thank you. Any discussion on these two things? Change your calendars, okay? All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. And, acknowledgement of receipt of town clerk's report. You have a copy in your packet of Stephanie's report. I'll make a motion that we accept the reports as distributed by the town clerk. Thank you. Any discussion on either of these? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thanks. Okay, item 17. I'm sorry, you just did that. Item 18 is the minutes of September 11th, 2019, the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I'll make a motion, we approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any additions, corrections, changes? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. And then we have the meeting minutes of September 24th, 2019, special meeting. I'll make a motion, we approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Any additions, changes, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All of a sudden, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. Might see you guys all soon. Thank you, everyone.